LBC app and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, a jury in Los Angeles has found both Meta and YouTube liable for social media addiction. The plaintiff, a 20-year-old woman who claims her early use of social media addicted her to the technology and exacerbated her mental health struggles, will be awarded $3 million in damages. LBC's technology correspondent Will Guyett says it's reminiscent of rulings made against the tobacco industry in the past.
That ultimately transformed tobacco control. The industry had to pay hundreds of billions of dollars in the US for smoking-related illnesses. I reckon we're probably not far off something similar coming, and it's going to take a period of time. We may still be in this conversation, Andrew, in a decade.
Snapchat and TikTok were also defendants in the trial, but both settled with the plaintiff before it began. Foreign interference has been branded a persistent problem in UK politics as a report calls for significant curbs on donations. Former civil servant Sir Philip Rycroft is recommending a limit on how much money British people overseas can give to parties and a pause on cryptocurrency funding. Andrew Marr asked him what the problem was with cryptocurrency.
The problem is that this market is evolving quicker than the regulatory context can keep up with it at just where we're at now. And that race will get even quicker when we see AI coming in. So what I'm not saying is ban crypto assets as a source of donations forever. What I am saying is put a pause on a moratorium until the regulatory environment has caught up.
An Iranian official has told state media they've rejected a US peace plan, calling it excessive, and have issued their own conditions to end the war. Donald Trump's administration insists its military operation is ahead of schedule. Tehran remains in control of the Strait of Hormuz, and more US troops are heading to the region. Here, the effect of the conflict in Iran on energy costs dominated Prime Minister's questions, with the Tories and Reform calling for new drilling licences to be issued for sites in the North Sea. The Prime Minister said it was a decision for the Energy Secretary, but said the priority for energy security was renewables. Conservative MP Claire Coutinho told Tonight with Andrew Marr on LBC, drilling is just common sense.
All of the gas that is drilled in the North Sea goes into our pipes. All of it. It makes up about 50% of our supply. Now, if we didn't use the North Sea, by the time you get to 2035, we'd be 3 times more reliant on LNG. That's gas which is coming from places like Qatar and the US, and it has 4 times the emissions.
But Labour Security Minister Dan Jarvis told Andrew it's important the UK has a diverse energy supply.
In the very short term, energy bills will be coming down for people in April, and you will have seen that there was specific support announced the other day for those who use heating oil. So there are a number of things that the government are doing to try and counter the cost of living at the moment as a consequence of the situation in the Middle East.
Resident doctors, formerly known as junior doctors, will strike for 6 days in England after Easter. Their union, the British Medical Association, says the walkout will start at 7 a.m. on the 7th of April, accusing the government of shifting the goalposts in talks about pay and jobs. Health Secretary Wes Streeting says medics should accept the offer of a 3.5% wage rise, calling the expectations beyond reasonable and realistic. London's mayor has backed the idea of having the London Marathon across 2 days next year. Organisers say it would allow thousands more people to take part and raise millions more for charity. Over 1 million people applied for this year's event. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 142 points at 10,106. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.16. The LBC weather, showers and winds easing overnight. Clear spells will allow frost patches. It's a low of -1 degree. Then a sunny but chilly start tomorrow, but cloud will move in from the west with rain in Northern Ireland and Scotland and a high of 10 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Tim Humphrey.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. Welcome to the programme. It's 4 minutes past 7. I'm Iain Dale. Let's catch up on what's been happening in the war in the Middle East today. Well, Iran has rejected Donald Trump's 15-point ceasefire proposal, according to Iranian state television. Now, earlier today, an Iranian military spokesperson mocked talks of a deal and vowed fighting would continue. I think he actually said that Donald Trump seems to be negotiating with himself. Now, the US is preparing to deploy 2 Marine units with around 5,000 Marines to the region. And Israel began new attacks on Iran targeting government infrastructure as Tehran launched strikes across the Gulf region. Now, oil prices have dropped by about 6% earlier today, bringing oil under $100 a barrel. But I suspect they've gone up again because Iran has now dismissed this American plan to pause the war and launched more attacks on Israel and the Gulf Arab countries. Now, I'm not hugely surprised by this, if I'm honest. If you actually look through the Trump 15-point plan, there is no way that the Iranian government was going to agree to most of the points. So I'm left with the thought that Iran is now calling the shots in this war. They've reacted in a much more aggressive way, particularly towards the Gulf states, and I think the Americans ever imagined they would. They don't seem to be running out of drones or missiles. Now, I've got absolutely no idea whether that is likely to happen in the future days or weeks or not. Iran seems to be trenchantly continuing the attacks on both Israel and the Gulf states. And the Americans are obviously going to continue their attacks, as are the Israelis. So given that we are now nearly 2 weeks or 3 weeks now? It's nearly 3 weeks into the war, isn't it? I wonder if today you think that anything has changed. I think the only thing that's changed is that Iran is looking a lot stronger than I would have imagined that it would by this stage. So that's my question to you. How do you think things have changed? Do you think Iran is calling the shots? What was the point of this peace plan, which never looked as if it could get off the ground, did it? 0345 6060 973. Well, let's talk to Tara Kangalu, who is an international affairs journalist, who is the author of the book The Heartbeat of Iran, Real Voices of a Country and Its People, and who's also an adjunct professor at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Tara, thank you very much indeed for joining us. What's your verdict on this Trump peace plan? Did it ever have a chance of getting off the ground?
Yeah, it's good to be with you. I think one thing we've learned is that nothing is predictable when it comes to the Trump White House. And we just heard the press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, speak just about an hour ago. And she also said, don't take everything in this 15-point proposal seriously. And that means that there might be other points and lines that we don't know much about. But what you said earlier in your introduction can very well be the truth. And that is that in ways President Trump is perhaps buying time, and in tandem, the Iranian government, in more ways than one, is taking the upper hand. And I think that is indeed true. They think that they hold the cards because they're choking the Strait of Hormuz. They've thrown everything in the region in shambles. The global markets are affected. And the last thing I would say to that point is Iran's most powerful arsenal is not its missiles or drones, but it is the disruption that it's causing. And the more they can drag that, they feel the more concessions that they can get from the United States. And I think we're at that point.
I mean, what concessions could the United States give which would satisfy Tehran?
I think first and foremost, we need to remember that the Islamic regime has been consolidated, which is it's a dangerous thing. So right now we have the most hardline factions of this government in charge. We also have to remember, it's important for our viewers and listeners to remember that it's not just one person, Iain, in Iran who's calling the shot. It is a system that has been planning for this day. They are prepared, they're ready, and they're working together. The IRGC is made up of different factions, so it's an apparatus that has been set up as such to move forward. However, it's still an existential crisis for them. So the most important thing as it stands is for their survival. So they're fighting for that. But at the same time, they want to make sure that, number one, as they said, by the way, so today, in response to this 15-point proposal by the president, they responded back and said, we want to make sure that this is an end to all aggression and assassination. So no more assassination. We want to make sure that this is not a ceasefire, Iain, but rather a war that has come to an end, meaning we want to make sure that we're going to survive and we're not going to come under attack again. Also, the reparation. So that's something that, by the way, this is nothing new. Since the start of the war, they've been talking about payment and reparation. Also, the support for their proxies. As we know, right now, Israel is fighting Hezbollah in Lebanon that quite frankly, is having a catastrophic humanitarian impact on the people in Lebanon. So also the proxies of Iran, Iraq, Houthis, which, by the way, we haven't really seen much of in the past month or so. So they want to preserve their proxies. And last but not least, the sovereignty of Strait of Hormuz. So these are the demands that, according to the Iranian state news, were presented today. But again, to pin that statement, thought, for them, the most important thing is their survival, and they would make sure that that takes place all the while the sanctions are lifted. That's probably what they want as well.
And what about Donald Trump's position? Because there's nothing more dangerous than a wounded animal. And we know that Trump guards his reputation very closely, and he won't want to be seen to be humiliated, but I think he is on the verge of that now. Now, do you think that means he will double down in the military action or seek a way out of this?
I think, Ian, both sides, both the United States and the Iranian government, have a way of packaging this and making it a win for their audience. So the day will come that this war will end, and the president and his administration would wrap it with a bow the way the audience for them would buy it, and then the same for the Iranian regime. What is just startling right now is that in the 15-point proposal, there was no mention of regime change. There was no mention of helping the Iranian people and a transition to a democracy or any form of such message that, quite frankly, Ian, was one of the catalysts in all of this. Remember maybe a bit more than a month ago when we saw thousands of people in Iran across the country taking to the streets, and President Trump said, "Help is on the way. We are coming to help you and support you and allow you to take the helm of your government." Right now, we're at a moment where, in more ways than one, we're seeing a Venezuela strategy. Right, that we might end up, the United States might end up working with whoever is left in the Iranian regime that is now younger, more emboldened, more radical and hardline, and that initial promise and the help that was promised to these millions of people who are caught in the middle of all of this is forgotten. So I think that's something we need to remember. And I will say it again: both sides will package it and wrap it the way they want and claim a win. And what's left would be, again, a lose for the Iranian people and, quite frankly, people in the region who are all affected by this.
Tara, great to talk to you. Thank you very much. That's Tara Kangalu, who is an international affairs journalist and author of the book The Heartbeat of Iran. Well, Ben Talablu is Senior Director of the Iran Programme at the Washington-based think tank, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you very much for joining us. What's your verdict on the events of today? Are they a bit of a humiliation for Donald Trump, or was he ever serious in this peace proposal?
It's a pleasure to be with you. I think, if anything, it's a humiliation for the Islamic Republic, which is to not be able to take the face-saving line of retreat that was offered to it. With these sorts of moves, the Islamic Republic is proving that command and control is nowhere as well linked and sophisticated as some have said, that this is not a systems-based approach. This is a zombie regime that has been decapitated, where the left hand doesn't really know what the right hand is doing. And ultimately here, they are forcing the president to continue the war, whereas the president has been looking for multiple political, economic, and even military off-ramps. So as much as one may be able to lodge qualms or criticisms of the 15 points, the fact that the Islamic Republic did not even settle for that, to me, that just sounds like pure hubris. And they actually might get the actual thing that they seek to avoid, which is more U.S. military intervention. Make no mistake, this is just like their Persian Gulf strategy. They internationalized the war in the Persian Gulf, and they've hardened the views of the GCC states as being more pro-American and more pro-Israeli and more anti-Islamic Republic. The Islamic Republic made this exact same mistake in the Iran-Iraq war. They internationalized the conflict by targeting tankers. That brought the world superpowers in and actually led to things like the forcible opening of the Strait of Hormuz back in 1987, 1988. So I think history in so many ways is repeating itself.
But what is the evidence for factionalism within the surviving Iranian regime? Because it seems to me that they seem to be very resolute.
Well, there is a hardening national security deep state, but one would have to ask about command and control. For example, who is able to turn on and turn off the fire? Who is able to pick between a drone attack and a missile attack? Who is able to pick between certain energy targets versus other targets that the IRGC Aerospace Force is firing at? Ghalibaf is the civilian head of the parliament. How is it that the Trump administration may be looking to such an individual to deliver men in uniform to turn on and turn off the fire? Ultimately, you have a new secretary of the Supreme National Security Council. If he's giving directives, who are these directives being given to? There's a whole series of command and control that has been gutted by this conflict. And actually, those who say they need to see evidence, we need to see evidence of the connectivity. You know, post 12-day war, the supreme leader of Iran was reported not to even be having electronic communications. And that's precisely how you get into the situation that you get into now, where it's easier to go after these various nodes than ever before.
But isn't it clear that it's the IRGC who are in command of the military strategy? And that...
wasn't it clear before the war? I mean, the funny...
Well, I don't know.
The funny thing is everybody is talking about IRGC ascendance. I wonder where they were for the past 2 decades. It's not just that the current new secretary of the Supreme National Security Council is an IRGC veteran, but the past 1, the past 2, the past 3 secretaries of the IRGC have been, secretaries of the Supreme National Security Council have been IRGC veterans. So that which we're seeing is only the next chapter in a movie that was already written. And that movie is hardline military domination of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
How do you see this war progressing over the next week or two? Because, I mean, following today's events, you could come to the conclusion that neither side is really interested in any form of compromise and that the military action is going to intensify.
I fear that that assessment is 100% correct, that because neither side is looking for a compromise, both sides might be looking for a surrender to enshrine their political view onto the military battlefield. It means that the most proximate conclusion is that the war is going to continue. And because the war is going to continue, much is going to hinge on their military strategy. For America, for Israel, that military strategy means going after the capacity and the capability of the regime's security services. For the Islamic Republic of Iran, that means going after the will. They're trying to attrite the resolve of the West to stay in the fight, which is why for America and Israel, the battle is largely political and security based, and why for the Islamic Republic, the battle actually has a lot more to do with energy and economics. And so what we are witnessing absolutely is a great game of chicken over the Persian Gulf, over the Strait of Hormuz, over air and missile defense in the Middle East, and much will be determined on the battlefield rather than at the negotiating table.
And as all this happens, the world economy goes to pot. That's the effective result of this for the rest of the world, isn't it?
Well, certainly the world economy is taking a shock, but the shocks are nowhere as cataclysmic as has been believed. I mean, the Trump administration is even doing things in Washington that its supporters would not have assumed they would be doing, relaxing Russia sanctions, relaxing Iran oil sanctions, even for a period as far up to a month, to be able to make sure that both in terms of supply and both in terms of price shock, we don't have this thing out of control. I mean, if you control for inflation, the shock caused by the Russia invasion of Ukraine in 2022 has been greater on the world economy and on the oil price than it has been presently. So while there was a real cause for concern over shipping, over insurance, over oil supply, and over oil price, if past is prologue, this is in the short to medium term a manageable crisis.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Ben Talablu, who is from the Foundation of Defence of Democracies. Right, we'll come to your calls in a moment. 0345 6060 973. Do you think the terms of trade in this war have changed today, given the Iranian rejection of Trump's peace plan, which I have to say, when you look through the 15 points, I mean, we had what was the Gaza peace plan? Was that 28 points, something like that? And you read through that and you thought, well, OK, there's a few here that are a bit odd, but most of them stacked up. I'm not sure these ever did. And the Pakistani government have tried to sort of say, well, we'll act as peace brokers. But I'm not sure this document was even worth their intervention on that front. So where does this go now? Is Iran in the ascendancy here? Do you think they are calling the shots? And does that make you fearful of what the reaction of President Trump might be? Because he can't back down. The Iranians can't back down. So where does that leave the whole conflict over the next few weeks? It's 90 minutes past 7.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
This is a shambles.
Straight to the point.
How was that allowed to happen?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Show some evidence, Minister.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
You've probably been with the same energy supplier for decades. And why wouldn't you be? Loyalty matters. But lately, bigger hasn't always felt better. You've probably dealt with long waits and endless automated menus in search of someone who can actually help. Octopus Energy is now Britain's biggest energy supplier, trusted by over 8 million customers, because we do things differently. Our people focus on the most important thing, you. When you call, you'll speak to a real person. No robotic scripts, no computer says no, just an honest conversation with someone who actually wants to help. Join the millions who've already made the move. Octopus Energy, recommended by Which? A record 9 years running. Visit octopus.energy/better for verification.
I'm Natasha, and this is my NHS story. I went to the GP because I'd found a lump in my breast, and the GP referred me to a CDC centre. It was just really welcoming from the moment I arrived. To just be reassured all in one day was fantastic.
The government is opening new community diagnostic centres, with many already available 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, so the NHS can be there for all of us when we need it. Find your closest one at gov.uk/NHS Fit for the Future, available England-wide.
Iain Dale, text 84850. This is LBC.
21 minutes past 7. Let's go to Yasha, who's in Barnet. Hello, Yasha.
And I think Donald Trump is trying to throw a deal to Islamic Republic because he's under pressure, obviously. And he knows that is not going to go any further because Iranian wouldn't, the Islamic Republic wouldn't accept that. So it's a win-win for him because he would say, I tried to the world. I did my best. They rejected it, and I'm going to carry on the war. But that's why he's under pressure and he's doing it.
The problem is that nobody really believes that this peace plan was in any way very serious, do they? And if you're going to propose a peace plan, you not only have to convince the other side that you're serious about it, you have to convince your allies, or indeed everyone in the rest of the world, that it's a serious document to be taken seriously.
That deal was a great deal for the Islamic Republic, who
How?
Is under too much pressure. They could stay in the power in a way, although they are dead. For Iranian people, I'm Persian Iranian, so they are gone for me in my mind. For everyone in Iran, gone. They're just existing, but they're gone in our mind. So it's a matter of when.
So, well, I hope I definitely hope you're right. But my impression is, and I may be wrong here, but my impression is that Iran has been strengthened over the last few days.
They are just kind of showing that we have more power. They are exaggerating their power. Cannot do anything. They've lost many head of their states. So it's literally headless.
Well, they're not appearing headless, though, are they? I mean, if you look at the military action that they're taking with the drone attacks, the missile attacks and drone attacks on Israel, I mean, it does seem to be coordinated. There does seem to be some sort of strategy, which if the regime was falling apart, you wouldn't expect to see.
None of the attacks they are doing is organized. They are just kind of headless chicken attacks towards anywhere around Middle East. When Israel and US do attack, they are targeting where they want. The Islamic regime is doing it just randomly.
Do you think that the game changer in this could lie in the hands of Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi and one or two of the other Gulf states who have significant military capabilities? Because if Saudi Arabia launched its air force on Iran, I mean, that would be a major development, wouldn't it?
would be a major development if other countries in the Middle East get involved. Because for now, it's only US and Israel. But if other countries in the Persian Gulf area get involved, it'd be a game-changing.
Yasha, thank you very much. Let's move on to Hassan in Westminster. Hassan, very good evening.
Good evening. Ian, I think the war continues. I think the Iranians have, by surviving and continuing to retaliate, have seized the initiative. I think Trump's sort of lack of preparation and lack of a coherent plan has been exposed. I think the problem is that Americans and Israelis want to resolve this militarily, so they'll keep attacking Iran as they've been doing, and Iran realizes that their only way to create chaos and make a financial payment is to attack the soft targets in the Gulf and in the region. So I think it will continue to be dark days. I think the oil prices, etc., have been somehow sort of kept down by some sort of weird pronouncements from Trump, from release of strategic reserves, etc., allowing the Russians to sell oil, allowing the Iranians to sell oil. But eventually, I think if this war continues, we will start feeling the pinch in our pocket.
Well, we already are, aren't we? I mean, my local petrol station diesel was 179.9 when I came by this afternoon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, look, I mean, instead of sort of offering or rehashing sort of 15 points that were offered in March 2025 and hoping that the Iranians will accept it, I think it's time that we actually try and de-escalate and come up with some sort of way forward.
But who could do that? Because, I mean, if it doesn't come from one of the two, well, there's three participants in this at the moment, but if it doesn't come from any of those, and even if Trump's peace plan had been accepted by the Iranians, I suspect the Israelis wouldn't have bought into it. So who is there in the world that could bring this to an end, or at least mediate?
Yeah. I think, look, Pakistan has sort of stepped into this rather boldly. I don't have much hopes for that, but I think it has to be the non-combatants. And I think hoping for the Gulf states, etc., to somehow become active on one side and the other, as you were saying, and be a game changer, I don't think that is going to happen. I mean, those countries are just sort of effectively proxies for the US anyway. All the equipment, all the kit is American or British. So I don't think they'll make a meaningful impact on the war effort. I mean, these are not sort of premier grade military powers. In fact, they might even end up losing a lot more planes than so far.
Okay, Hassan, thank you. Stefan says, isn't it possible that some in the regime would like to be in power post-war and will have secret talks with Trump without the agreement of their regime peers? We've seen Trump accept certain of the Venezuelan regime to continue in power already. The Iranian regime is not necessarily united. Well, that's what one of our guests was saying. I think that is probably true. But then again, there are plenty of people, I suspect, in the Trump administration, you could say, that aren't necessarily 100% behind this. We saw one of them resign last week, Joe Kent. Kaz is in St Albans. Hello, Kaz.
Oh, hi, Ian. Yeah, I just, when you get rid of all the propaganda, the agenda from reporters that are pushing certain agendas and stuff, I think the truth of the matter is that Iran has actually won this war, and it's just a matter of time before Trump gives in. I mean, the guy you had on before, the democracy guy or whatever he was talking about that there's no head. I mean, how on earth do you do pinpoint accuracy and blow up so many bases, in American bases in that region if it's not all being controlled? Qatar's lost their $2 billion defense system, so have the Saudis, so have the Kuwaitis.
Sorry, what have they lost?
Their defense systems, the American defense systems, THAAD and the other one, whatever it's called. They've all been
you're telling me something I don't know. I'm not saying you're necessarily wrong. But...
well, it's reported on alternative media, not mainstream, you see. So I think members of the public are quite confused and not seeing the full picture. But They've lost all their bases. Their troops have been forced to leave.
Well, when you say on alternative media, so my suspicions are immediately raised, because what sources are you talking about? Because if these three countries had lost their military capabilities, I think we might have heard about it.
Well, Scott Ritter, who's an ex-UN weapons inspector, he's got his own podcast that he talks about it. You look at one of the old generals from the American Army who has got his own podcast and talks about it. There's F-16s that have been shot down, and 3 of them, and it's due to user error rather than missiles hitting them. The latest one is the U.S. aircraft carrier, which hasn't been reported. They said that there was a fire somewhere and it's been damaged, and it's been sent to Greece, and it's a $2 billion and a 4-year project to rectify it. Which
do you not? I mean, in all honesty, Kaz, do you not think if that was all true, what you've just said? I mean, what you're effectively saying is that there are people in the mainstream media who are deliberately suppressing these stories. Now, I haven't heard any of these stories. You may say I'm looking in the wrong places, but I don't believe that my colleagues in the BBC or CNN or wherever would deliberately suppress any of those things.
All right. Let's look at it from a different angle, Ian. And I know you're very good at debating. I'm not going to debate. I just want to have a nice...
No, again, look, I'm not saying you're wrong, Kaz. I just have to be a little suspicious.
Okay, right. So America's a superpower, along with Israel. Why is Trump giving them a 30-day exemption from exporting oil if they're at war with Iran? I mean, if that's not the biggest signal that they're not in control of the situation, then what is?
Well, we will leave that question hanging. Kaz, thank you very much indeed. Now, we're going to take more of your calls, lots coming in, lots of texts as well. I'll get through as many of them as I can. And we'll also get a report in a moment on this really important decision in a court in America where Meta and Google have been found liable in this landmark social media addiction trial in California. That could have earth-shattering consequences. 0345 6060 973. Keep your calls coming on Iran. It's 7:31, and let's get the latest news headlines from Tim Humphrey.
Tech companies Meta and Google have been found liable for potentially causing addictions. A jury in Los Angeles has found in favour of a woman who claimed her use of social media as a child was harmful. Resident doctors in England are striking for 6 days from the 7th of April. Health Secretary Wes Streeting says members should accept the pay rise they've been offered. Political parties will be banned from accepting donations in cryptocurrencies after the measure was recommended in a review of foreign financial interference. The government will also cap donations from UK citizens living abroad who are still on the electoral register. LBC weather, showers and winds easing overnight. Clear spells will allow frost patches, a low of -1 degree.
This is LBC.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on. Sorry.
And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
Fancy a trip to France without the fancy price tag? Go all Irish. With great low prices, travel from Dover to Calais with Irish ferries and you'll have France at your feet in 90 minutes. Can, less. More money, less money. You get the picture. Get a warm Irish welcome on board and a cool pint of the black stuff on us. Zero alcohol, of course. When you book direct at irishferries.com. Go on then. Irish Ferries. See travel differently. T's and C's apply.
Imagine sweeping through green fields, floating 5 feet above ground, sun on your face as you slide by on track to your destination. Not a care in the world as you simply lean back. And before you know it, you're there. This is how travel should feel. And on our trains, it does. Avanti West Coast. Feel good travel.
Iain Dale on LBC.
7:34 on LBC. Well, I mentioned a moment ago about this landmark decision by a Californian court. There'd been a court case where a teenager, she's actually now 20, had alleged that the algorithms that these companies do had made her addicted to social media and had damaged her mental health. Well, the jury found in favour of her today. What are the consequences of this? Well, let's talk to Professor Lorna Woods, Professor Emerita at the University of Essex, who specialises in internet law. God, that's a specialisation and a half, isn't it? Lorna, thank you for joining us. This is a big day, isn't it? And do you think there'll be executives in these two big companies quaking in their boots?
I think it's a big change, and I think it's a decision that's going to be subject to appeal in the American courts because it is so big. The reason it's a change is that for the last decade or so, we've been talking about the harm that can potentially be created through these platforms, about being items of content. So somebody says something nasty, and you look at the speaker, and then what we have been saying is, should the platforms be liable for that speech as well? And they've been protected. What we've got is a shift in focus to what's more like, I suppose, product safety. And the argument is that the design of the service isn't safe. It has been designed to make people stay on the platform. This is to support the business's income stream, which is based on advertising. More people using the platform, more viewers for the advertising, more money. And they've done that without thinking about the consequences of excessive use. And the consequences could be you're not getting out and seeing people, or if we're talking children, not getting out and playing games, or concerns about the content children are seeing. So this is extremely violent content, perhaps. Or there is a concern about, say, body dysmorphia. So the concern is moving less from those individual items of content and more to the design. And the protections in law that we've had, what was called platform immunity, doesn't apply for product safety cases. So it's suddenly exposing them to liability.
OK, let me play devil's advocate here, because I don't disagree with anything that you've just said there. But you could make those same allegations against many food manufacturers or drinks manufacturers, because a Mars a day helps you work, rest and play. Well, could we not go after the makers of Mars bars for trying to get people to be addicted to Mars bars, which damage their health if you eat too many of them? Oh, you see where I'm going with this? This could have much more wide-ranging implications than just the tech industry.
Well, there is a question there about causation, and this is probably going to be one of the arguments that the companies will be wanting to raise if they do appeal, is how do you show that the companies are actually responsible for this? How do you show causation? What happened in the trial, as I understand it, is that the claimant was arguing that you don't actually have to prove, in effect, a single cause, but something that made a substantial contribution. So maybe the manufacturer of Mars is now saying, oh no, we don't like that Iain Dale. He's just given a load of suggestions to people who've eaten too many Mars bars.
Well, maybe I should put in a claim. That's where my diabetes came from. I think I should put in that claim.
There is a balance to be made, though, between, I suppose, people's existing weaknesses and the role of, in this case, social media platforms. The social media platforms in this case argue that the problems that the plaintiff, KDM, suffered wasn't so much caused by them as underlying mental health conditions she had anyway. The jury accept that.
Now, I'm told that there are lots of other similar cases on the stocks at the moment. Now, say most of those go the way of the plaintiff. I mean, are we in a situation where these companies could literally be financially ruined over this? If over the years we all decided, well, I mean, I'm addicted to Instagram Reels on the train home. I do know that I don't have to look at them, but and the algorithm they serve me up all sorts of things, which I'm wondering why on earth I won't say what it was, but I had one this afternoon where I'm thinking, what on earth is my algorithm giving me this for? And I could be quite insulted by that, or the particular one that came through. So, I mean, there's always a claim about something, isn't there, particularly in the United States?
Yeah, well, it could potentially add up. This case, the jury awarded for one plaintiff $3 million, which is, I think, nothing to the companies involved. I think their annual revenue is in billions. But I think the news outlets were talking about 1,500 possible cases in California. And so it does start to add up.
Yeah.
There was a case earlier this week, I think maybe even yesterday, in New Mexico. Slightly different argument, but again pointing to inadequate safety features and the way that the services were designed, so consumer protection measures. That gave rise to I think a couple of $100 million once you added up all the plaintiffs. Again, not much, but then you start thinking, well, there's the 40 other states that are wanting.
Well, there was a case yesterday, I think, in New Mexico where a jury ordered Meta to pay $375 million in civil penalties after it found that they misled consumers about the safety of their platforms, enabled harm, including child sexual exploitation against their users. Well, I mean, if that sets a trend, they're in for some very rocky times over the next few years. Yes, of course, they're incredibly rich. Yes, they have a massive turnover, but nobody's immune, are they?
No. Well, they used to be immune from content claims, but if these product safety style claims stay, then they are going to be exposed financially. It seems likely they will challenge, partly on this argument of how do you prove that they were really responsible, which is going to be a complex question, but also about free speech, because the First Amendment in the States is quite wide-reaching, and so they may seek to challenge the case on that and say you cannot have a product safety claim that interferes with free speech.
OK, thank you very much, Lorna. That's Professor Lorna Woods from the University of Essex. Just to say that Meta says it is going to appeal that New Mexico verdict from yesterday. And as regards today's California verdict, they say they respectfully disagree with the verdict and are evaluating their legal options. Google has said it will appeal the California case. Right, back to your calls on Iran. Omar's in Birmingham. Hello, Omar.
Hi, Ian. I'd just like to say I think you're correct in your assessment so far that Iran has the upper hand. And just to give some credit to one of the last callers, there is some of the things he mentioned about being reported, but I think the issue is that a lot of it is in either Hebrew or Persian or Arabic, so a lot of it doesn't get through. However, I think a point that's been mentioned before, where you said that the Gulf states would become involved, like Saudi Arabia or the UAE. I don't think that would kind of affect anything militarily on the ground, partly for a number of reasons. The first being is that the eastern side of Saudi Arabia is mainly all Shia, about 20% of them. Bahrain is also a majority Shia population, and 90% of their food and water comes in from the Strait of Hormuz, and the southern part of Saudi Arabia, where the Houthis are, they've is already claimed by the Houthis, actually, that part of Najran in Saudi Arabia. And they've made it quite clear that if any of the Gulf states become involved, then they would activate the Bab al-Mandab, the Strait of Mandab also, which would obviously only exacerbate the crisis. When it comes to the claim that it's kind of like a headless chicken running around, if you listen to some of what the Iranian generals have been saying over a number of years, is that the army structure has become decentralized in the event that they knew that this kind of attack would come, where the Israelis and the Americans go for this kind of decapitating strike. So over the last 2 or 3 weeks, you've seen that slowly more and more missiles are actually getting through in both the Gulf states and in Israel. Today on Israeli TV, the mayor of Kiryat Shimon, he was actually crying, saying that we've been abandoned and everything keeps coming through. You have like Hezbollah issuing these evacuation orders in the north, and you have Iran also saying that the Galilee should be evacuated. So this idea that they're running out or everything is not coordinated, I think is actually not true. I also have a friend.
Well, hang on a minute, because you just said, you say it's not, people shouldn't doubt that it's coordinated, but on the other hand, you also said that because they knew that this kind of attack was coming, the command structure in the Iranian military has been decentralized. I mean, you can't have it both ways.
But yeah, decentralized in a sense where if the head is taken out, these, from what I understand and how it was explained, is that each kind of decentralized command has its own operating orders, which also makes it quite difficult when Trump says he's speaking with someone. We don't actually know who he's actually speaking with. And the idea that also he said he's going to control the Strait of Hormuz jointly with Khamenei, with the son of the person he's just killed, there's also an indication that I don't think he has any control. And on the 20th of March also, on BBC Arabic, there was an Omani journalist who said that, according to some documents, Trump actually said to the GCC states that if you want the war to stop, it will be a price tag of 2.5 trillion, and if you want it to continue, it's going to be 5 trillion. So again, it shows that the idea that the GCC states are going to offer like some kind of some advantage is probably not all there, and the fact that what are actually Trump's objectives? It went from regime change to nuclear to protecting the Gulf states. I think it's a bit all over the place. But I think generally in your assessment, you're correct. Iran does have the upper hand, and it's going to be without a ground invasion, which is going to need, millions of troops. And I don't know which country or which population has the morale to commit to that, or the finances to do so.
Well, it's also quite difficult to, if they did have some sort of ground operation, where would the troops come into Iran from?
Yeah, which is an amazing point. If you look at a topographic map of Iran, it's all mountainous. And I think Ali Larijani is his name. When asked on some American station, you might have seen it.
Yeah, I did. About
the question of a ground invasion, he actually said, "This is what we're waiting for. We're waiting for them to come because this has been built into their contingency plans." And this is also, if you just look at Afghanistan, this is like a smaller version of it, because you have the Taliban who are just armed with AK-47s, a much smaller population, 20 years of insurgency. Now, if you take those factors and you put them through the Iranian scenario, it's got the potential to cost even more, to be even more disastrous. And how do they win? And I think that the three key demands that Iran has put onto Trump, he has no way other than to kind of dress it up as some kind of win eventually, because I think even you would agree that at this rate, him going into the midterms, he's going to lose, which is something which would be unbearable for him. And what would be the consequence of him losing? And thirdly, it comes into this question where people say maybe there won't be an election, maybe he wants it to be in a situation where he can declare some kind of national energy emergency. There won't be any elections. Obviously, that's speculation. But the point is, unless he comes and he packages what he already has, it's going to be very difficult. And there's already reports today that I was reading on an Israeli channel that they suspect within the next week or two that Trump is either going to call a ceasefire or pull out unilaterally, which leaves even more questions.
Well, I think that last possibility is the most likely one, and he will claim victory, whatever the situation actually is. I've just been looking at the countries that border Iran, and it's actually quite difficult to think if they were intending. I mean, they've got 5,000 Marines on their way there at the moment. I mean, it's actually difficult to see where they could come in from. The only possibility, I would say, is through Iraq. Well, that opens a whole can of worms, doesn't it? Because there's no way that Turkey would allow it. There's no way that they could do it through the Strait of Hormuz. And as you say, the topography of that region is very mountainous along the Gulf there. So I don't know how that would happen. Let's hope it doesn't. Right. Let me tell you who's on Cross Question in 10 minutes' time. Sirocco Forte, businessman and hotelier. Dr. Jeevan Sander, Labour MP for Loughborough. Baroness Kate Fall, Conservative peer, and Cole Cashman, leader of the Liberal Democrats on Liverpool City Council. It's 10 to 8.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who joins me now, it is reported today that you are going to make it easier to dismiss racist or anti-Semitic doctors accused of those crimes. How will that work in practice, Secretary of State?
It's not just about anti-Semitism. This applies to racism more generally, but we've had a particular problem online with anti-Semitism. I've got Jewish people in my own community. They don't want to tell people that they're Jewish because they're frightened that they might get treated differently by our National Health Service at a time of great vulnerability. I have not known a level of fear and anxiety among Britain's Jews in the way that we see today, and people questioning whether Britain is a safe place to be Jewish.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Hi, I'm looking for a pair of jeans.
Right. Low slung, slouchy, wide leg, bower leg, curved leg, flared, straight or skinny.
Blue?
Fashion. It's hard to keep on top of. Other things, like the upcoming changes to renting, are a bit easier. If you are a landlord and you have existing tenants, you must send them a copy of the government's information sheet by the 31st of May, or risk a fine. Find out more at gov.uk/renting is changing.
You want your car in good hands. With expertise, Halfords will keep it moving this spring with ease. You want your annual service ticked off. That's great. And in store, we'll fit batteries while you wait. You're never far from a garage or store for fitting, fixing, checks and more. You want mobile experts to fit tyres on your drive while you relax and take 5 to keep moving forwards with none of the fuss. You want Halfords, the name you can trust. Full T's and C's and exclusions apply. See halfords.com for details.
What's the best present you ever got for your birthday? I bet it wasn't as life-changing as £1 million. Every week with the birthday draw, there's £1 million to be won. And you can enter from as little as £1 or via post. Enter by midnight on Sunday and your special day could win you £1 million. Visit thebirthdaydraw.com. Is it your lucky day? From Global and ITV. 18 plus, UK only, no purchase necessary.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on. Sorry.
And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
7:53 on LBC. The lines are open for your questions for Cross Question 0345 6060 973. Now, I haven't read out many texts in this hour, have I? Let's rectify that now. Isn't it possible some in the regime would like to be in power post-war and will have secret talks with Trump without... No, I've already done that one, haven't I? Sorry, I should have deleted it. Let's go to a different one. Iran desperately wants to end this war, but they can't trust Trump and Netanyahu. Remember, it was Israel that was willing to attack first. Well, up to a point, Lord Copper, because, I mean, Iran has been attacking Israel in one form or another for decades. If it was Starmer and the Europeans negotiating, this would have been ended by now. Well, that is possibly true. And here's one from Dave. Trump and his advisors' critical error, I believe, is that one thought for one moment. Is that one that doesn't make sense. That Iran would attack their Gulf neighbours as much as their Gulf neighbours have defended themselves. See, again, this is a text with no full stops in it. Put full stops in your text, otherwise I can't read them out. Let's go to Tom in Sutton. Hello, Tom.
Hi there.
What would you like to say?
I just wanted to say that now that Iran is clearly turning out to be an unmitigated disaster, it's incredible that now the media and everybody else is talking up the possibility of a ground invasion. I mean, how much more blood and treasure?
Well, why do you say the media is talking up a ground invasion? I just mentioned that 5,000 Marines are on their way to the Gulf. I mean, I don't know what they're going there for.
Well, they're not going there for a picnic, are they? Just like
but it's not talking it up to state a fact.
Hold on. If you don't just listen to LBC and you listen to the coverage all day on BBC, Sky, or whether it's Channel 4, or even CNN or MSNBC, it's all saying the same stuff. So these ground troops that we're there, these soldiers, these Marines that we're sending over, what role are they going to play and all this? So I think that's called talking it up. No?
Hang on a second. Surely it's perfectly acceptable for... I mean, I was watching Sky earlier and they had a military expert talking about this. Surely it's quite reasonable to speculate on what they're going to be doing, because if we didn't, we'd be accused of hiding it.
No, I didn't say that it wasn't acceptable. What I'm saying is that we're going down the route of escalation. But here's the thing. We're already, when we say we, America is already losing this war. And, of course we can say, Iran can't possibly beat the Americans and the Israelis militarily. Yeah, that's true, straight up. But let's not forget, America was beaten by slipper-wearing farmers in Vietnam as well as in Afghanistan. So when it's asymmetric warfare, which is what it already is, America hasn't got a chance, and it's already been taught that again and again. And now if we say, we're going to send over these soldiers, these Marines, and they're going over there and they're trying to intimidate Iran. I mean, wasn't it on the first day, or was it the second day, the foreign minister of Iran was saying, we're waiting for you. We're waiting for you. We've had 2 decades of preparation because we knew this day would come eventually. And so, and here's the thing. What's one of the biggest hashtags going on? It's Send Barron Trump, right? The guy who's been allegedly making more money on Polymarket and all the others through insider trading than anybody else. He's not going to be going to the front lines, but ordinary working class men and women are going to be sent over there as always. These chicken hawks who are online. You
are drawing a lot of very bizarre conclusions from some of the things that you've just said there, but people can make up their own minds. Let's go to Jason in Bushy. Hello, Jason.
Yeah, good afternoon. I think that Donald Trump is so out of his depth because he doesn't understand how these people think. It's a theocracy. These people don't believe in this world as the final stage. And he does. All he thinks about is money. And I think that he's so far out of his depth, and he is dealing within his own administration, people who think about the end of times. These people want the world to destroy because that's the only way that they'll go.
I mean, seriously, why'd you come out with such idiot? I mean, they want the world to end. Really? Is that the best you can come up with, Jason? I think we've heard enough, frankly. Right, on cross question in just a moment. I'm sure we'll be talking about Iran. We won't be talking about the allegations that last caller made against Barron Trump. They're not substantiated at all. So Rocco Forte will be with us, a businessman who's the chairman and co-founder of the luxury hotel group Rocco Forte Hotels. Dr. Jeevan Sander is Labour MP for Loughborough. Baroness Kate Fall, Conservative peer, who was the Deputy Chief of Staff for David Cameron when he was Prime Minister. Seems a long time ago, doesn't it? And Carl Cashman, leader of the Liberal Democrat group on Liverpool City Council. Lots of things to talk about today. You might want to talk about this court case that Meta and Google have lost in America. You might want to talk about the war in Iran. You might want to talk about what Kemi Badenoch was saying at the Prime Minister's questions and the Prime Minister's response to her today. 0345 6060 973. You may want to ask about why Nigel Farage and his merry little band walked out of PMQs today as well. Get your calls on the line and we'll get you through as soon as possible.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, Meta and Google have been found liable for social media addiction in a landmark case in the US. A jury's found them negligent after a 20-year-old woman said her early use of social media made her addicted and her depression worse. Professor Lorna Woods, expert in internet law at the University of Essex, told LBC there are concerns platforms are designed to keep people engaged for longer.
They've done that without thinking about the consequences of excessive use. The consequences could be, if we're talking children not getting out and playing games, concerns about the content children are seeing.
Resident doctors in England have announced a further 6 days strike action starting the day after Easter Monday. The British Medical Association say it's over their ongoing dispute about pay and jobs. The government says donations to political parties from abroad are to be paused. It's after a report warned of increased efforts by hostile states to interfere in UK politics. And the organisers of the London Marathon are applying to run next year's event across 2 days. It would allow tens of thousands more runners to take part and raise millions more for charity. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed at 142 points at 10,106. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.16. LBC weather, showers and winds easing overnight. Clear spells will allow frost patches, a low of -1 degree. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
I've looked after my kids since they were born. Now they've got kids. I still want to look after them. I don't want them struggling to make decisions about my money or my health if I can't. So we made a lasting power of attorney. Now, if I can't speak for myself, they'll speak for me. It's a weight off for all of us, isn't it?
Yes, Mum. Lasting power of attorney. Search your voice, your decision.
This is LBC. From Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
It's 2 minutes past 8 on LBC. Welcome to the programme. It's Cross Question on Wednesday. Joining me on the panel, to my left, Carl Cashman, leader of the Liberal Democrat group on Liverpool City Council. Next to him, Dr. Jeevan Sander, Labour MP for Loughborough. To my right, Baroness Kate Fall, Conservative peer, who was Deputy Chief of Staff for David Cameron while he was Prime Minister. Sort of his mini Morgan McSweeney, I like to think of you as, Kate. And next to her, Sir Rocco Forte, businessman who's the chairman and co-founder of the luxury hotel group Rocco Forte Hotels. They're here to take your calls, 0345 6060 973. You can text on 84850 and, of course, watch us on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel.
0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Right, let's start with a WhatsApp question from Sam in Surrey. Do you think that Trump's approach, threatening to unleash hell while also claiming diplomacy, is a sensible strategy? Or does it risk escalating the war further and eventually dragging the UK in? Or do you think we will always stay out of this conflict? Jeevan.
Well, it's not worked so far. I think that's absolutely fair to say. In terms of where we're going to go forwards, look, what's our foreign defence policy at the moment? It's one, how do we keep us safe here in the UK? And two, how do you make life affordable? Now, joining those strikes to begin with, but not make us more safe, as we've seen in the region, and given the rise in prices, would also make life less affordable. So those are the principles that are going forward. It hasn't worked so far. That's very, very clear. Everyone at home is seeing not only the image on their screen, but the rise in oil and gas prices. Where this goes in the future at the moment, very uncertain. But it's clear that our nation, every one of us, is facing a more difficult time, more unstable time. These unprecedented events keep happening. And for us here in this country, the question is, how do we unite to take on these moments? And a big part of that is, one, understand that we have a lot in common as Brits, facing up, having the courage to face the challenge that we're in, and of course making life affordable to everyone to have a stake in this country.
Okay, Kate?
So look, let's start with the language. I do think some of the language coming out of America has been really worrying. And when we're talking about life and death, I think they should be way more careful about how they talk about things. Look, Trump went into this war without setting very straightforward objectives, which means it's difficult to see when he comes out of the war. Regime change does not look like something that's on the cards. In the meantime, the Iranians have discovered that, quite apart from their nuclear program, they have an even more forceful weapon in the form of the global economic choke points of the Strait. And it's very unclear how we solve that problem right now. The Gulf have been brought into the conflict now. And so British interests are at risk. So I think we are involved in terms of a defensive involvement because we support the Gulf. We have an economic crisis on our hands, which is going to now create massive political problems, really important problems for everyone in the country on cost of living. And in the end, geopolitical problems. Who knows what's going to happen with Ukraine and even NATO after this ends, when it ends.
Kate Coss, can I ask you a question? Because you were Deputy Chief of Staff for a while with David. When you were there, would you have recommended joining the initial strikes on Iran?
So I think it is difficult to gauge these sort of things. I think saying, you can use our bases to support our allies in the Gulf and support our economic interest is the right thing to do. I do think the problem is that Trump went in there without A, talking to us, and B, without setting a clear set of objectives. So all of that would have been extremely difficult to navigate.
And just to clarify, do you think those initial strikes were in our economic interest?
I think it's right to defend our colleagues in the Gulf, and I think it's right to support trying to sort out this global economic crisis.
But the reason I'm asking this obviously clearly is that Kemi did support the initial strikes. Farage supported the initial strikes. She sort of wanted the Americans to use our bases to use those strikes.
But that's not involving Britain in the strikes. That's just allowing them to use the bases. There is
to the bases. But this is about the offensive action that led to it. It was not about the defence of our own bases or interest at that particular point in time. And I would say at that moment in time, those offensive strikes were not in our economic interest, given what's happened since. So the question I'm really asking is that Kemi to begin with, but Kemi did say to begin with that she would allow the Americans to use the base for those offensive strikes. When you were in government, would you have recommended that course of action?
Well, that's the sort of if that we were taught never to answer. You should know that, being political yourself. But look, these are difficult decisions. There's often not a perfect outcome to these. There's a cost either way that you do it. I think we've been right to support the Americans since it became a defensive situation. Should we have said, yes, use our bases to begin with? It's a difficult call, that one, but I think we're definitely right to be doing it now.
Okay.
But we were attacked. The Cyprus base, our Cyprus base was attacked even after we hadn't given Americans permission to land on our at our airports. So I don't think it made a lot of difference, actually. The reality, this was a thing that was going to happen sooner or later. We have a terrorist regime in Iran, which has attacked its own people, terrorized its own people, crashed the economy. Everybody's and the original riots that happened in Iran were caused by economic strife more than to start with. They've then killed 30,000 of their own people. They've built up a stockpile of weapons, which actually no one realized until now. We didn't realize they had missiles that flew 4,000 kilometers. They were still enriching uranium despite of everything, and so on. So sooner or later, something had to happen, and I think it's happened now, and I think we should go through with it and sort them out.
Is it? Well,
it's interesting that Saudi Arabia is now. MBS has said to Trump, finish the job.
But you say so. What does that mean, though? Finish the job? Because
it means getting rid of this mafia that's in control of the country, just enriching themselves.
But can that really be done just by bombing them?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we'll see, because there's talk of troops on the ground now, which originally were that idea was negated.
I don't think you can,
Carl.
You can say that we'll see, though, because I think the Iranian people, many of which, if you meet an Iranian person in this country, they're not very happy with the regime over there. So
that is an understatement of the year.
No, exactly. But there's people there, good people, that don't agree with that regime, who are going to die as a consequence of Donald Trump launching these missiles into the country. And we need to call that out. I think too often we get focused on, the UK's response to these people. Actually, why aren't we calling out Donald Trump and what he's doing? Because you can't have two things at once, which is, we're going to go to war with Iran, and then in one breath he's calling it a war, and then in another breath he's saying, "Oh, don't call it a war, don't say that," and then saying that he wants to, he wants to resolve the issue and leave these new people in power, which are just going to be as bad as the old regime. Now, I think that Donald Trump doesn't know what he's saying from one moment to the next, and I think that someone's told him in America, the polls are saying that this will look really good for you if you do this. So he's gone and done it with no outcome.
They're not looking really good for him on it. I mean,
I
think only 36%
so.
of Americans support this action.
Yeah, I believe that someone has said to him that this would be the right thing to do, and he's living to see the consequences of that, both in terms of the polls and economically in America as well.
Let's bring in a follow-up caller in. David is in Enfield. Hello, David.
Good evening, panel. My question is, does the panel think that the major beneficiaries of the Iran war will ultimately be China and Russia?
Rocco?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, Russia hasn't really supported Iran. Russia's got its own problems, the war it's fighting.
But if the oil price goes up, the Russians benefit from it.
Yes, for the time being. But I mean, oil price isn't going to go up forever. The thing will eventually come to a conclusion. China imports 20% of its oil from Iran. It imported a lot of oil from Venezuela, and that's been stopped. So from China's point of view, it creates quite a difficult situation.
China's been quite silent on this, hasn't it? I don't remember seeing many comments from the Chinese leadership on this.
No, they haven't, and so has Putin been quite quiet about it. He hasn't.
Okay, Kate?
So I fear the answer, I think it's a very good question. I fear the answer is yes. I mean, in the intelligence circles talk about the crinks, who are China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. And you've been seeing a sort of growing an axis of behaviour there. I mean, Rocco's right that just because oil goes up for now, it won't last forever, but it has given them a boost in relation to Ukraine, has taken American eyes off Ukraine, so that's a boost for them. China, it will be interesting to see how it plays out afterwards. You could see that the Gulf are feeling afterwards, who our allies going to be, and they might be thinking, well, the Americans have come in and created a problem, so maybe we'll sort of we'll find the Chinese more reliable. So you're seeing these shifting balances and alliances, and this conflict in Iran is only going to exacerbate that. So my concern is, yes, this might well play into that axis.
Carl?
I think, anything for the Russians that takes the attention away from what they're doing in Ukraine is probably seen as a benefit for them. And equally, tying up the Americans in a war that they don't really need to be involved in, that is causing chaos in the Middle East, and also taking up American taxpayers' money, and now to some extent English taxpayers' money, is only going to benefit Russia. And I don't really know why we're involving ourselves in this type of campaign.
On the subject of China, in the last couple of hours, the White House has announced that Donald Trump, his delayed 3-day trip to Beijing will now take place in the middle of May. It was originally meant to take place next week, it says here. I thought it was in April, but anyway, Jivan.
This is where in terms of where Russia is, it helps to alleviate a constraint, but the Russian economy was very much straining at this point in time. It's dropped all its resources into producing drones, fighting forces, men for Ukraine. But you're reaching the point where really it starts to creak and creak and creak and starts to strain and strain and strain. And you're seeing a lot of that. It alleviates a short-term pressure. But for us, the question is, now we can and should be able to defeat Russia in any conventional conflict. European NATO's GDP is about, yes, we should be, but that takes our means, if you like, both the means and the will to convert our greater GDP into fighting forces. So I'm saying is, yes, Russia is still facing a difficult time in Ukraine. This does help a little bit on the dollar side, but they're still straining. But for us in Europe, the question is, how do we defeat Russia and make sure that any war is unthinkable? And that is for us to convert our GDP rather, into fighting forces. That is about us in the UK. It is about working with our European allies. It is being aware that the Americans are more and more looking away from Europe. We do have to take control of our own security. In terms of China, I think the real danger here is actually about the norms that we had after 1945, i.e. that you couldn't redraw borders by force, that to have an armed conflict had certain rules around it. And when you take away those rules, those sacrosanct borders, it starts to leave everything up to play and fundamentally leads to a less stable, less secure world.
I agree with everything you said on
That's great to hear you. Thank
defence
you.
spending.
You can stop there, it's fine.
However, what's the evidence that anything has changed? Because there's a report on sort of what we're going to spend on defence, which keeps being delayed. The Prime Minister still won't say when that's going to come out. There doesn't seem to be any evidence that there is increased defence spending. That we've got welfare spending mapped out until 2031, but not defence spending. Where's the urgency?
So we have a target for increasing defence spending. And by the way, to be clear, the first duty of this government, of any government, is to defend our nation. So I would expect this government to absolutely increase the spending if the need was there. I would absolutely support that as well. It's the first duty to do so. But the other side I say about this, Iain, yes, it is about increased money. I do agree with you on that. It's also about the things we are spending it on. So not just, for example, greater shells, but also supply chains for things like drones, given how quick the innovation cycle is. And very crucially, this goes far beyond the production side, the defence economic strategy. If you do go into war, how quickly can you convert your resources into producing shells, tanks, drones, getting people to where you need to? Where is Britain's armed forces in the structure of European NATO? Those are the questions. I expect Number 10, the MOD and the Treasury to be addressing those questions, to be absolutely clear. But it is the first duty of this nation. It's what I expect this government to do. It's what this government will do.
Can I just say, isn't the reality that if this conflict or war, whatever you want to call it, goes on for a bit longer, it's going to hit the global economy, it's going to hit our own economy really, really hard, and that's going to open up extremely difficult issues for the Treasury and put choices back on the, like, for example, welfare and other things that are painful for your party and be very difficult for the country.
And it is, and to be clear, like, one of the reasons we're finding it so difficult, not just this nation, but high-income nations across the world, is that as people have found life less affordable and they're seeing anger and hate pumped through their screens, we are becoming more divided and weaker. And we're seeing politicians, unfortunately, in the chamber, what used to be the mainstream, try to divide us further. We've seen Nick Timothy do it, we see Reform do it, we see Jenrick do it, trying to pick us apart.
Well, to be fair, we also see the Prime Minister doing it.
Our job
Island
as
of
Labour
Strangers,
politicians,
may I remind you?
he apologised, and by the way, was right to do so. And myself, of course, I would say this: I'm so proud to be British and live in this country, because I always knew the colour of my skin didn't make a difference. But the point is, as we face this moment, we have to unite in strength. And part of that is the cultural stuff, part of that's not dividing us, but crucially as well, making life affordable. Because in this country, if we don't show people that this country has a stake in them, they will not have a stake in this nation either.
That must have made you, I was just going to say, that must have made you uncomfortable then when Keir Starmer said that.
He apologised. But the other thing I'd say as well about the Island Strangers phrase in particular, I'm a politics nerd, right? I've done before I had grades and before I had a beard. I did not recognise that phrase before it was said, oh, by the way, that was an echo. And if I didn't recognise that phrase, being as geeky and as sad as I was as a teenager, I do not expect anyone in Number 10 did either. And knowing what I know about Keir, I don't for a single second believe it was intentional.
I think the lesson there is read the speech before you deliver it.
Well, I'm sure. Look, and the other side of it, I'd say this as well. In Keir in private, there are things that he's really shown to me. And I think one of those things is about how much he values a country where every single person can contribute.
I mean, yes, but not everybody is contributing. That's the trouble. There are fewer and fewer people contributing in this country. In 2000, 60% of the economy was in the private sector. Today, it's only 50%. Government is taking more and more and we're producing less and less as a result. If we haven't got a growing economy, you're not going to pay for any of these things.
I think
how are we going to pay for extra defence expenditure? Where is it going to come from?
I think nurses produce. I think teachers produce. I think Russian people who collect our rubbish also produce for our nation. I think it's a different payment mechanism, i.e., if I go to the shop, for example, I hand over £1, I get a good in return. Now, if I pay my £1 in taxes, I get different goods goods in return. But I don't think it's fair or right to say
you're not getting very good goods in return.
Slightly off the subject here, but I just wanted to finish this section with a quick question to Kate. You worked in Number 10 for 6 years, and you're used to the sort of pressures on a Prime Minister. Did David Cameron ever deliver speeches that he hadn't ever read?
No, he really he loved working on his speeches, too much so. I think it was too much so the other day. So he spent a lot of time on the speeches. So the answer is no.
Okay, right. Let's move on to further questions, but first let's go to a break. It's 18 minutes past 8.
LBC.
This is 40-year-old Kathy, mother of 2 and self-confessed telly addict.
Oh, look at you. That's brilliant. Well done.
This is also Kathy, working as part of a team to keep things calm at her local prison.
Listen, speak to me.
And helping someone's son write his first letter home in 8 months.
Well done. You should be really proud.
Thank you, miss. An extraordinary job, done by someone like you. Search prison jobs now.
If you owned a diesel Nissan, Renault, Jaguar or Land Rover built between 2009 and 2020, you could be entitled to compensation. Checking takes minutes at jointheclaim.com, and if successful, compensation could be worth thousands. Don't miss out. You could be among the millions of drivers across the UK bringing diesel emissions claims. Check now at jointheclaim.com.
Join the claim!
Eligibility criteria apply and any compensation may vary.
With over 50 years' experience, at Fidelity, we believe there's a difference between investing and being invested. Investing is having access to guidance, tools, and expert insights. Being invested means feeling confident about your future. Investing is choosing from a wealth of investment options. Being invested means focusing on your long-term goals. For ISAs, pensions, or advice, be truly invested with Fidelity. Go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
20 past 8, let me reintroduce my panel to you. Sir Rocco Forte, businessman and the co-founder of Rocco Forte Hotels. Dr. Jeevan Sander, Labour MP for Loughborough. Baroness Kate Fall, Conservative peer, and Carl Cashman, leader of the Liberal Democrat group on Liverpool City Council. Right, let's go to a text question from Kaz. Keir Starmer says it's purely up to Ed Miliband whether we drill in the North Sea or not. Is our PM now completely powerless? The Prime Minister today at PMQs said that under the law, the decision over whether new licences for North Sea drilling for oil and gas should be granted or not rests with the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, namely Ed Miliband. Kate.
So I did think this was quite odd. I mean, he's Prime Minister. He's in charge. He needs to answer that question. That's the first thing.
But he's right. In the law, it is the Secretary of State.
The Prime Minister is running the country. If he can't say this is what the decision, I own that decision, then that undermines his sense of credibility. And it also just gives this sort of air to this narrative, which is beginning to sort of come out of Number 10, that Ed Miliband is back in charge and he's really the sort of strong voice around the cabinet table. And I think, anyway, it's a very important issue, this, because, look, we're back to the war again for a minute. We realised that we're very vulnerable and exposed on energy security. We could have some very big problems in our own country coming quite swiftly. I think some of the policies about sort of pushing renewables are good. The question is, what do we do about this sort of moment of vulnerability? And do we use or sort of double down on what we have available just up the road? And I think the important thing is to make a big decision and stand by it. And you don't have to. It doesn't have to be, oh, that policy was wrong and this is right. It can just be, look, we're in a crisis. Let's just do what we can to make the gap work, basically.
Okay. Jeevan, isn't the question here really about cabinet government, where Keir Starmer could have replied? Well, you're in PMQ.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
I mean, I did think that he missed a trick there, and he could have said, well, I believe in cabinet government. I have talented people around my cabinet table. I don't have to make all of the decisions. I'm not a dictator Prime Minister, unlike insert Conservative name. But he didn't do that, did he? Slightly flailed a bit.
Hindsight's a brilliant thing, right? We always think about the thing we could have said after the conversation. I think it's fair to say. Look, Kate, I take the I take the point, but there's no way when you guys are in government you would have said we're going to forget a rule of law at this particular moment because it's not suitable for us or convenient for us to override it right on the other side of it. You know it's a quasi-judicial process. But beyond that as well, on the general principle of this stuff about energy security, to be clear, the reason why we are so exposed, why energy prices increased so much in 2022 is because we are dependent upon fossil fuels and particularly natural gas. The reason why we had the biggest increase in prices in 2022 of any G7 nation is because we use natural gas to generate our own electricity. And it was a deep and crying shame with the last Conservative government to ban onshore wind, which got us off that natural gas. So the answer is, how do we become independent on our energy, homegrown British energy? It is renewables, it is solar, it is wind, and crucially, it is, yes, also nuclear by which to balance the grid. And I just want to take on this bizarre idea there is that if only we drilled in the North Sea. Under the last Conservative government, 14 years worth of licences gave them 36 days worth of gas. We are not the Saudi Arabia of the North Sea. There just isn't that much oil and gas there. And finally, and most importantly,
there is. We've still got. I think there's. Well, the estimate varies between 15 and 25% of what there was in the first place. I mean, that's still quite substantial.
It's a declining basin where actually to get it out is less economic. You take the stuff that's easiest first,
oil and gas
harder
companies
later.
Say it's commercial to extract the gas and oil. Well, why wouldn't we let them do that?
Because the oil and gas companies may also do that and then say later down the road, in order for me to extract it, I also need a tax break to extract it. The other side of this as well is by the marginal pound of investment. For the marginal pound of investment, would you rather put it in a gas field by which is going to make us less secure, or do I want to put it in nuclear?
How does it make us less secure?
Because that energy is more expensive in price, and as we've seen, that price it internationally. So at this point in time, when households across this country are looking at their bills, the reason why their bills are going to go up is not because of wind, solar and nuclear, it's because of natural gas prices going up, because of mad dictators from abroad leaving us dependent on fossil fuels.
But if we don't extract it, we can't sell it, we can't get the tax revenue from it.
There's not much tax revenue or much oil and gas to come out. There's not much tax revenue or oil and gas to come out of there. Like, we know it's a declining basin. It has been for a really long time. And of those last 14 years of licenses, 36 days worth of gas, there just isn't that much oil and gas in there. So it's not a route we can take. But most importantly, for both price security and for the future of this country, it's not a route we should take.
The part of the reason why the energy price is so high in this country is the subsidies we're giving to develop wind and solar.
It's not true.
It is true, completely true.
Nope.
And those things wouldn't be built if those subsidies weren't there. And the consumer
they
is
were
paying.
there, but not so much now.
They're not.
They're still there.
A guaranteed price. It's not a subsidy.
In a big way. They had to be raised last time round. There was a bid for the offshore wind farms. So and this country can't go forward if our energy costs now are 4 times those of the United States, twice those of continental Europe, and we're carrying on and carrying on. It's complete rubbish, this thing. If oil companies are prepared to drill, even with the ridiculous taxes they're charged on their profits now, 78% of profits, which actually disencourages them to look for oil. They're prepared to do it. Why shouldn't we let them do it? They're paying for it.
Politely, sir, just to say clearly, in terms of what happened in the wind price auction, it's not a subsidy. It's a guaranteed price because the price of the future wind farms will fall. And that guaranteed price is 40% cheaper than natural gas. So the guaranteed price, yes, gets us lower energy, but also gives us energy security at home. And when it comes to oil and gas from the North Sea, that oil and gas is set by the price internationally. Having oil and gas in 2022 did not give us cheaper energy bills, because that oil and gas is the same price whether it comes out the North Sea or whether it comes out the Middle East. So it doesn't make our energy more secure. And the reason why we know that is because we went through this in 2022 and our oil and gas that we had didn't lower our price. So it doesn't make our energy more secure. It doesn't make life more affordable. It lays us in a more dangerous and less secure world.
Kate?
I was going to say, look, I'm all for renewables, and a lot of what you're saying, great, but actually we're talking about a crisis right now where we could, in a couple of weeks, or if this if this conflict goes on for longer, we have a problem. So I don't think we should be overly ideological about one versus the other. Right now, we've got something up the road. We've got North Sea. We've got a bit of capacity there. Why not play that in? It just seems sensible. It doesn't mean you're going back to that in the longer term. We're talking about the short term as well as the medium-long term.
Okay, Carl.
Yeah. No, this extremely intelligent member of Parliament has just put something to us very succinctly. But my concern is, I think a lot of people who will listen to this show and the average Joe won't understand what we were talking about then. And I think the problem that we've got in general with net zero and these targets are that we're not bringing people on a journey with us. And that's why I think the likes of Reform and others have latched onto the North Sea issue, because they can make a very simple point. Why aren't we drilling for this in the same way that Trump or the Middle East can? Whereas it's not as easy as that. So I think we need to take people on a journey with us to get to carbon neutrality or to get to net zero. We're not doing that at the moment, because what I feel like, and it's not just your government, with respect, it's been previous governments as well, is we're shoving down people's throats that, you shouldn't drive a car, you shouldn't do things that damage the environment. And ultimately, most people, I know in my city in Liverpool, do drive a car or aspire to drive a car. So we've got to, get to that stage. We've got to make energy bills cheaper, but we've got to bring people with us on the journey as well.
And is that a message your party leader is receiving loud and clear, do you think?
I think, he's concentrating a lot on the cost of living. I think one of the things that we want to do is tackle heating oil prices with an immediate VAT break. I mean, one of the things that I certainly do agree with is the move to nuclear. I think one of the things that we need to do in this country is move to nuclear power. The only problem that we might have is where those nuclear power stations go, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of
Mersey Docks.
Of it. Yeah, not going there, Ian, I tell you. My constituents wouldn't be having that.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it?
But where are these nuclear power stations coming from? They're not being built. France has 70% of its electricity is generated through nuclear. We have very little. And
we've had governments for 20 years that
I know, I agree.
refused to go down that road. And it used to be your party's policy. You were completely against nuclear power. So either your party's undergone a conversion or you have.
Have I we spoke before, Ian. I think I haven't undergone a conversion.
I should just say, we've recorded an hour-long All Talk podcast just before this programme, so I know exactly where you're coming from.
But you'll see, if you would have listened to Ed's speech at the recent conference.
Sadly, I had a subsequent engagement.
Oh, really? I bet you did. So Ed talked about having our own nuclear deterrent, and I think this goes to your point earlier, Ian, when you said, we haven't got rockets that can act as a deterrent or can act as defensive missiles. I think that's really dangerous in the world that we're living in at the moment. So we need to, invest more money in our defences, nuclear deterrent and nuclear power plants as well.
Okay, let's go to the LBC News at 8:30 with Darryl Jackson.
Meta and Google have been found liable for social media addiction in a landmark case in the US. A jury's found them negligent after a 20-year-old woman said her early use of social media made her addicted and her depression worse. Resident doctors in England have announced a further 6 days strike action starting the day after Easter Monday. The BMA say it's over their ongoing dispute about pay and jobs. And the government says donations to political parties from abroad are to be paused. It's after a report warned of increased efforts by hostile states to interfere in UK politics. LBC weather: showers and winds easing overnight. Clear spells will allow for frost patches, a low of -1 degree.
This is LBC.
When you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you.
Life feels better with a smile. Banning Dental Group Clinics. Modern, comfortable and affordable dentistry for all. See online for our price match promise. Keep on smiling.
Keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles with you.
banningdental.co.uk.
It's not easy being a clamp, stuck on the wheel of the one person on the street who didn't tax their car. Yeah, Graham at number 7, I'm talking about you. Bet the neighbourhood group chat is as well. Wish I had a group chat. Maybe I can chat to myself. Hi, Clampy, how's it going? Not great, Clampy. Being clamped to the only untaxed car for miles is so lonely. Over 98% of drivers tax their vehicle on time. Tax it. Don't risk it. Visit gov.uk/DVLA/tax it.
Hey, Harry. Hello, mate. Got any tips? Sometimes, pal, your best bet is not to bet at all. And Bet Victor's app makes it really easy, simple and safe to do so. They've got lots of helpful features to help you manage your time and your spend online. But it also really helps that I can't find my blooming phone half the time.
Yeah, that does really help.
I don't even know where it is now. I can hear it, but I can't see it. Sandra?
Listen to Harry, and please gamble responsibly. 18 plus gambleaware.org.
Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
8:33, with us on the panel, businessman Sirocco Forte, Labour MP Dr. Jeevan Sander. The doctor bit, what's that for?
I'm a PhD.
In what?
Economics and politics, but mostly economics.
Proving yourself to be a geek again.
Not the doctor my parents were necessarily hoping for.
No, quite. Baroness Kate Fall, Conservative peer, and Carl Cashman, lead at the Lib Dems on Liverpool City Council. Mark in Cardiff wants to know this. If I were to be investigated for a crime and the police wanted to look at my phone and I claimed it was lost, do you think that excuse would wash, or would they ask the mobile phone company for the data? Now, Downing Street has refused to confirm whether any important messages sent between Keir Starmer's former Chief of Staff Morgan McSweeney and Peter Mandelson were lost when McSweeney's phone was stolen in October. The Met Police has admitted it did not investigate the theft at the time, after McSweeney, in a panicked state, gave them the wrong street name for where the theft took place. Which I have read the Met Police have released a statement today where they've actually given a transcript of the conversation between Morgan McSweeney and the I don't know if there's a 999 operator. And he said Belgrave Street rather than Belgrave Road, which you can understand in that state you might make that mistake. Is a lot being made of this, Carl Cashman?
Perhaps in some ways, but I think the fact that Keir Starmer and the Labour Party came into government and their main kind of ethos was, we can't go on with the way that things have been, the corruption under the Conservatives and, the contracts that got handed out to their mates. And it feels like they've been involved in some of the same stuff. And I think the country's in a position where it just wants to move on from this kind of pantomime type politics. And the likes of Morgan McSweeney, I feel, plays very much into that. And I just, for the life of me, don't understand why Starmer hired Mandelson in the first place. It just seems like a really politically naive move.
Well, I suppose the way out of this is to ask Peter Mandelson for all the WhatsApp messages, because he would still have them on his phone, unless that's been stolen too, of course.
The way that you said that, I thought Peter Mandelson was going to walk in the room. And there's Peter Mandelson to tell us. It's a very odd one for me, Ian, because I think the more that time has gone on while Labour have been in government, the more Keir Starmer has come out as not a very smooth operator, and it's like the politics is just a byproduct of something that he has to do, being Prime Minister, and he'd much rather be behind the desk doing the kinds of the day-to-day policy stuff. Now, that's not like a leader to me, and that's not what the country needed after the last Conservative government.
Well, as a representative of the last Conservative government, Kate Fall, what's your answer to Mark's question?
Well, look, I think Carl made some good points about just undermining that credibility at the centre, and I think it's so important that politics isn't undermined like that, and I think he makes a very good point about credibility as well. Look, it does look rather convenient that the phone went missing. But, these things happen, and he obviously had his phone nicked, and that was sort of, bad news for him. I would say, though, that as a security point of view, when I worked at Number 10 for 6 years, I was very paranoid about security issues, and obviously you're involved with a lot of stuff that comes through, and then it was the BlackBerry. I think if my...
halcyon days.
Exactly. I think if that had got taken, I would have been really, really worried about it, and I would have gone straight into the Number 10 security team and told them about it. I'm sure that... so I think that, that would have been a sort of worrying thing to have happened.
Rocco?
Yeah, well, I agree with what's being said. Here was a government saying it was going to change all that, transparency, honesty, and everything else. And this shows completely the opposite. Why government by WhatsApp? And some, you have red boxes, ministers who had a message put into their red box, which they read, and so on, and replied to it. Everything was recorded to some degree. This is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous way of governing a country.
Is it? I mean, surely we live in a 24-hour society. People are on the go all the time. WhatsApp is a very convenient communications method.
Yeah, but I mean,
run this program
where you're talking about serious political matters and where and decisions are important for the country and where there should be a proper record of them and exchanges relating to those decisions, they shouldn't be on WhatsApp.
And if they are on WhatsApp, Jeevan, I mean, there are mechanisms on WhatsApp to back up all of your data. It's saved on the cloud. You would have thought that, and this was a government phone apparently, you would have thought that the people in charge of security on phones would have automatically set them to do that.
But wouldn't you want, I mean, to say differently to you, if you had a phone that you could access all the messages, i.e. if someone had stolen the phone, then could see all the messages, you might not want that to be the case. So I think that could go in either way. In terms of specific of the situation, my understanding is the phone was stolen last year, and the humble address obviously was more recently in this. So it wasn't as if the humble address came down. It was like, right, you've got to hand over your messages. And then you said, oh, whoops, the phone has been stolen. My understanding is the phone was stolen last year.
That's correct.
And after that, it was passed saying, could you get back your own messages? And they were like, well, actually, 4 months ago, my last phone was stolen. So I think in that regard, I mean, I think you can open up, and I guess too much being made of this. I'm not going to make a judgment either here nor there, but it is worth pointing that out.
Right, let's move on to another Mark who says, given the farce in recent weeks of questions not being answered by Keir Starmer and today culminating with Reform using it as an opportunity to walk out, plus the inability of the Speaker to moderate, is it time to dispense with Prime Minister's questions? Well, for what it's worth, we've had several other questions sent in this evening which are very similar to this, asking what the point of PMQs is, given Keir Starmer rarely answers the questions asked to him. Kay, I'm going to start with you first of all as well, because it's not unusual for Prime Ministers not to answer questions at PMQs, but usually they'll attempt to answer at least one, which, I mean, last week, and Kemi Badenoch pointed this out today, he didn't even attempt to answer a single one.
So I agree. Look, first of all, I do understand that if you're looking at PMQ, sometimes it just looks like a bear fight, and what's the point? It's like a show. And that's frustrating given that it's at the centre of our democracy. What I would say, though, is we do put our politicians and our prime ministers into that bear pit and we ask them questions. And although I never loved PMQs and I never loved prepping my boss for PMQs, every single week he would have an enormous file and go through every single policy thinking about, how are they going? What would I say in answer to that question? And sometimes the numbers would come in a policy and it was just like, actually, that's not really working. And there is a sense of just keeping that Prime Minister to account. I know it's a bit of a pantomime in a way, but the key thing is that Prime Minister goes into the House of Commons and takes questions both from the Leader of the Opposition, but randomly from all the backbenchers. And I still think it's an important moment in the week.
Jeevan?
Probably a net positive overall. I think for both the reason that, one, you set out what your government is doing and it is a communication tool in that regard. It is true that you get to hold the Prime Minister's account. For backbenchers in particular, you get to raise issues. So I think it is an important moment. I take the points around the way it's presented. Everyone always talks about changing it, and I don't think in my lifetime it's ever changed.
The only time it was changed was when Tony Blair made it half an hour rather than two 15-minute sessions in a week, which I was never sure was the right thing. I mean, it gets it over with, and I suppose if you didn't do that, you'd have Kate, you would have had your week dominated by it because it was on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Exactly, and the group that came to give good jokes, which was always fun, but not always that useful.
Carl?
I think PMQs is extremely detached from reality, and I wouldn't be against scrapping something like that. I think, in some ways I wouldn't be against scrapping Parliament altogether and what it stands for. Yeah, sorry to say that to a historian like yourself, Ian, but I think a lot of people feel that way in the country, and I'm a big proponent of devolution and devolved decision making, and I think that Parliament in many ways is outdated. It's still got a position, but it's outdated. And just before you go back, I was scrolling TikTok the other day, and I seen an old video with it was Corbyn in his first Prime Minister's Questions versus Cameron, and he says, I'm going to do Prime Minister's Questions a little bit differently, and Cameron kind of responds in quite a respectful way, and I think that lasted all of like 1 or 2 weeks. So I've got no hope that it will change, but I don't see why we shouldn't just scrap it all together.
Let me give you a reason why we shouldn't, because people don't watch generally, unless they've got a direct interest in the subject, they don't watch select committees. They don't watch the Parliament channel when there's ordinary debates going on in the chamber, but they do watch Prime Minister's Questions because they think it could be entertaining. Now, it sometimes is, it sometimes isn't, but it does engage people in the political process. And if you get rid of that, I think Parliament becomes slightly irrelevant.
I think that's a fair point. I would probably propose more like a direct conversation between the Prime Minister and the country can put their questions to him.
Like doing phone-ins on LBC. Excellent idea. Well done. Rocco.
No, the Parliament is about holding government to account, and this is because the players make a farce of it doesn't mean the system is wrong. And Keir Starmer has lost a lot of his authority and standing because of the way he answers. He deals with this particular issue. He doesn't seem to have a view on anything. And that's the problem. He's sort of rudderless. He doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't have any real principles and things to base his policy on. He's in the hands of other people. And I think, and saying Ed Miliband is responsible, the Minister of Energy is responsible, he can sack the Minister of Energy any day he wants. Of course, he can't sack Miliband because the left party would rebel. But the reality, the Prime Minister, Mrs. Thatcher would never have answered a question like that, would she?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of examples of her doing well or not well at Prime Minister's Questions.
The analogy
in fact, her best PMQs was her last one.
Yeah, but the analogy would be if a law was passed down and someone said, why don't you do something different than what the law says? And the Prime Minister to go, you're right, what I'm going to do is scrap the rule of law and do what I like. Like, that's the analogy. So there is a problem there by saying that a previous Prime Minister would have just scrapped law or changed it. I don't think that is right. I think Prime Ministers do follow the rule of law or have traditionally followed the rule of law, some previous or recent exceptions aside. So I don't think that's the right analogy at all. I don't think Margaret Thatcher would have said, the law says one thing, but I don't like it, so
she would have indicated.
She wouldn't have dealt with it in that way at all. She either believes in the policy or doesn't.
But Jeevan, you presumably asked a question at PMQs in your time as
I've only asked one question.
And do you get approached by the whips to say, we'd like you to ask this one, or do you just decide what you're going to do yourself?
Was it your question?
I think you definitely run it past.
Will the Prime Minister agree with me that this Labour government is absolutely brilliant?
But look, I'm elected as an individual, so I fundamentally do get to ask what I like, right? That's within my purview and my right and responsibility. But it is on to me also to kind of give them a heads up and say, by the way, this is what I'm going to ask. By the way, sometimes opposition MPs will do exactly the same. I don't know if that's necessarily at PMQs. So I think sometimes, because basically you get a better answer. Like if you're trying to be oppositional.
Well, what you don't want to do as a Conservative MP nowadays is to plan your very clever question to find that Kemi Badenoch asks that herself, because that would be. I'm sure you've come across that before, haven't you, Kay? Because that's an absolute disaster. Because you've literally got 2 minutes to think, oh my God, what am I going to ask now? Anyway, more to come on Cross Question. 0345 6060 973. It's 8:46.
This is LBC.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on. Sorry.
And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
Interactive Investor would like to say welcome and thank you. Welcome to all our new investors who joined us over the past few months, and thank you to a certain competitor that decided to change their fee structure and sent them all our way. Visit Interactive Investor to see what you could save with our low flat fee. Interactive Investor. I think, therefore I. Remember, when investing, your capital is at risk.
Right then, who's all in for Cancer Research UK's Race for Life? Anglers, ramblers, climbers, five-a-siders, surfers, gamers, bikers, hang gliders, book clubbers. Are we up for it? Let's go all in against cancer, all in to help fund life-saving research. Sign up now and save 50% off entry to your local 3K, 5K, 10K or Pretty Muddy event. Search Race for Life. Discount ends April 19th, 2026. T's and C's apply.
Hi, I'm looking for a pair of jeans.
Right. Low slung, slouchy, wide leg, bower leg, curved leg, flared, straight or skinny.
Blue?
Fashion. It's hard to keep on top of. Other things, like the upcoming changes to renting, are a bit easier. If you are a landlord and you have existing tenants, you must send them a copy of the government's information sheet by the 31st of May, or risk a fine. Find out more at gov.uk/renting is changing.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8:48. I'm feeling very old because I've just been telling our panel about our fun question, which mentions French and Saunders, and only one of them is familiar with French and Saunders, Rocco. And I mean, it's made me feel very old. Carl, you're never coming back on. Right, Rocco Forte is here, Jeevan Sander, Kate Fall and Carl Cashman. A text question from Jesse. With the internet barons finally being held to account over in America, is it time for an Aussie-style social media ban for our children in this country? Now, a bit of background to this. Both Meta and Google have now confirmed they intend to appeal the verdict in California, which has ruled that they both deliberately designed products to be addictive and that this harmed a 20-year-old woman's health while she was a teenager. Meanwhile, the government here has now launched a pilot scheme around a possible social media ban for under 16s, which 300 children from across the UK are taking part in. As the youngest member of the panel and as penance for not knowing about French and Saunders, Carl Cashman.
Yeah. You're picking on me as well because of our conversation before. Yeah. So the liberal in me is really kind of uncomfortable with a ban on social media. But I also see the kind of the practicality, particularly in terms of the impact that it has on young people. It's quite clear to me that the way that social media is designed is to keep people looking at the phones, to make them addicted and to hack the brain in a certain way, so it messes with people.
But how is this different from food manufacturers who obviously want you to eat more and more of their products, or drinks manufacturers, which we know, well, not all food obviously, but some foods do harm people, and you are effectively encouraged to become addicted to them? How is that any different?
I think that's a fair point, and I think there's arguments from others, isn't there, about banning ads for McDonald's and other fast food chains.
Well done for advertising them.
Yeah, I'm not paid by them, I promise. But I think in terms of social media, I think I would lean more towards not banning a blanket ban, but I do think something needs to be done to address the issue that we face with social media.
Okay, Rocco Forte.
I think it's very difficult problem. I think certainly with the question of children, there is an issue, and I think schools that stop them using mobile phones while they're at school, I think that's a very good idea. When you start getting into the realms of free speech and so on, it's a complete minefield. I don't really know what the answer is.
Jeevan?
Well, it's definitely on the table. For me, it's whatever works. It does definitely damage us. But it damages all us in Westminster as well. I've seen colleagues just become, colleagues, I will say on the other side of the house, just become radicalised on X. They've just changed in the past couple of years.
Not on your side.
Constantly. No, my side's very brilliant.
Right.
But all of us are, of course, angels. But but of course, I have seen it happen. And I also think with us, by the way, I don't think it's quite as bad as there, but definitely previously became slightly divorced from where the public were. I think that's completely fair to say. It is really damaging for young people. Depression, anxiety, we're seeing it rise. We're seeing it rise both across the population as well as those who use social media more often. It's about the harms that it has. It's about grooming. It's about the rest of it as well. But more broadly, it's not just about the young people, it's about older people as well. And it is dividing us. This is an outrage machine designed to keep us engaged and addicted. It's a huge damage to us. And I think about the stuff I get on social media. The abuse I get, to be fair, isn't from under 16s. It's from adults who have become enraged constantly by things they see online. And these are people who presumably are normal. Some are bots, admittedly, but sometimes, I asked someone the other day, I was like, why are you so angry?
Yeah.
Like, this is just a screed of abuse about me just having a pint. Just because I like a pint, I love a pint. It's just a very strange way to live.
How dare you?
I do.
How dare you have a normal life?
But that's where we're at, right? So it's a very strange way to live. So yeah, for kids, it's absolutely on the table. Whatever works. I'm very open on the evidence, basically. Whatever's shown to work, fine. If it's not a ban, we don't. That's effective. Completely fine. Another way to do it.
You only
But
know
I
if
think
you
older
try it,
people
don't
as
you?
well.
Really, if it's going to be effective, you can't possibly know. I suppose you can look at what other countries have done, but
I think that's where you get to, right? You see what happens in Australia, but
Kate.
So look, I think this is still relatively new, by the way, what we're grappling with. I think the damage to children we're just beginning to become more aware of. And I think we are grappling between, I take the libertarian view that the ban is that the right thing, not least because, what we really want is these tech companies to actually be more involved and actually do more to actually, they've operated and now we supply the oxygen and it's up to you to sort out, what you take, what you don't take. And the problem is a lot of it is totally untransparent. So it used to be, you said it took a village to bring up a child. Now that village is sort of online and we don't see it. That's the crucial difference between, the McDonald's versus the social media. So look, I think we should be putting way more pressure on tech companies to do more. They can control some of those algorithms, by the way. They absolutely can. They're smart people. I'm a bit worried that banning just pushes the problem to another moment, but I don't think kids should have their phones in school, and I think we should try and limit how much social media they have at a certain age.
Stephen says, which panellist sounds like Patrick Stewart? He should do books on the tape for the US. Well, I think it's not you, Carl. I'm pretty sure it isn't Kate. I don't actually know what Patrick Stewart sounds like. I can't imagine it. So we think it's Rocco.
I think so.
Has that been said before?
Got a really nice voice.
Maybe some people said I sound like Prince Charles.
King Charles now. Right.
When he was Prince Charles.
Nicole says, does the church still matter in our society? Well, Dame Sarah Mullally has today been officially installed as the first ever female Archbishop of Canterbury. We're going to be doing a phone-in on this in precisely 6 minutes' time, asking if the Church of England is still relevant. Are we still a Christian country? Does the church still matter in our society? Rocco?
Yes, I think it does. And I don't think you can have a democratic society unless you have religion, which sets out some moral values and laws for which people live by. So I'm a Catholic, brought up as a Catholic, and that's given me a basis for the way I lead my life. I'm not necessarily a very good Catholic, and I can't say I'm not a sinner. But
do expand.
But on the other hand, there is the basis. It actually controls how I think about things and actually act particularly with other people. And I think it's important from that point of view. If you have nothing, what replaces it? And sort of the basis of Christianity is what this country was about, and it's now being interfered with in a big way, and I think it's very dangerous as a result. And the more vociferous a religion is, the more important it seems to become.
Okay. I've just looked at the time. Brief answers, please, from the rest of you. Kate?
So, yes, I think faith matters, faith of whatever faith it is, and I think it is the basis for the values in which we have as a country and society. But it doesn't need to be one faith. You can be Catholic, you can be Muslim, you can be...
But we are described as a Christian country.
Yeah,
Does that matter anymore?
No, I think it does matter. I mean, this is part of our country and our heritage. That doesn't mean that we don't respect and aren't tolerant about other religions. But as a country, to still have the church and to have the coronation, is it a coronation, elevation today, the Archbishop? I'm not sure what the right word is.
An enthronement, I think.
An enthronement.
But I wouldn't say I'm 100% right on that.
I think is an important part of what our country is, still is.
Jeevan?
Yes, And by the way, our country is evolving and changing. We have an intertwined set of different communities, but we should be proud of our traditions, of which I do agree. There are a huge amount of Christian traditions that both inform this nation, as well as its practice, its ceremonies, and its pageantry. And for Christianity in particular, you think about values of empathy, of forgiveness, and stewardship of the earth. I think what Jesus was doing there was encapsulating universal human values. That you can take those traditions, those values, those stories, and take them into your life, whether or not you believe in God itself. So I think absolutely so. And look, I wish her all the best.
Cool.
Yeah, churches do still matter, and apparently Liberal Democrats fix the rules of those churches, which is
very on message.
Always a good thing for the upcoming local elections. But I do think that faith is important in this country. The point I would make is that you don't need faith to be a good person. I think we need to get back to people being either good or bad people, and you can be a good person without faith. But I know a lot of people in Liverpool. There's Reverend Jean Flood, who's a member of my party, who's a reverend in Walton. She does fantastic work across many churches, and it's a lifeline for many people across the city.
OK, let's go to our fun question. Martha in Streatham has supplied it. French and Saunders are going to do their first on-stage performance together for 17 years when they do the London Palladium Panto at the end of the year. Oh, yes, they are. Which, you're supposed to laugh at that, which other legendary double act needs to make a comeback in your view? Kate?
Well, I'm going to go political. And I love the Blair Cameron PMQs. You were the future once is still one of my favourite lines. And
did you supply it?
I didn't, but I loved it. And then when David left, he said, I was the future once.
Okay.
I don't know, I think I go for Morecambe and Wise.
Oh, brilliant. Now, Carl, Morecambe and Wise were...
I know Morecambe and Wise.
You do. Excellent. I agree with you. They were absolutely fantastic. And the fact that their Christmas shows are shown every year tends to underline how brilliant they were. Carl?
I mean, if I'm going personal, Mo Salah and Bobby Firmino for Liverpool Football Club. If I'm going political,
because you're in a state of grief at the moment.
I am. Mo Salah has broken my heart, but I wish him all the best. And if I'm going political, I would go for Blair and Brown. They were in a different party to me, but I think the intellectual prowess of both of those people was just above and beyond what we've seen since.
I thought you were going to say David Steele and David Owen. Jeevan?
I would go for Obama and McCain. It was a different time in politics, but we believed in, there were things we agreed in the country. They agreed in the country as America, and same here. And that era of politics seems to be ending. We don't seem to believe in the same kind of values of Britishness at all. The very things have been fracturing apart. I think that's a real shame.
I'll go for Hale and Pace. Remember them? No.
What's Hale and Pace?
Hale and Pace were two blokes who were comedians, and they used to do a sketch show on a Sunday night on ITV, and they were very, very funny.
I think you're just making things up now.
No, I'm not. I swear I'm not.
Said anything.
Right, on tomorrow's panel, we have Labour MP Jim Dixon, former Conservative Defence Minister Tobias Ellwood, former Brexit Party and then Tory MEP Lucy Harris, and LBC's own Natasha Devon. Thank you all very much for coming on to the panel tonight. Well, coming up in the next hour, the first female Archbishop of Canterbury has warned against overlooking victims harmed by the failure of those in our own Christian churches and communities. That's what she said during her installation, as opposed to enthronement, as leader of the Church of England. Well, I want to ask you a very broad question here. Britain has often been described as a Christian country, and you can see why, given our history. Are we still a Christian country when less than 50% of us identify as Christian? Does it matter? Do we need to have a religious grounding, as Rocco Forte said earlier, to have a basic moral value as a country?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, a jury in the US has found Meta and Google liable for social media addiction in a landmark case. A 20-year-old woman who'd brought the case says her early use of social media made her addicted and her depression worse. Snapchat and TikTok were also defendants in the trial, but both settled with the plaintiff before it began. Lawyer Mark Lanier spoke outside court.
It's of very great importance to a generation of people who have been affected. We've had a number of family members who have been so diligent to be here to lend moral support, prayer support, emotional support during this trial. There are so many families who've been tragically hurt through the addiction of social media.
Resident doctors in England are to strike after Easter. It'll start at 7 a.m. the day after Easter Monday and will last for 6 days. It's part of a dispute over jobs and pay. The Prime Minister's announced a pause on political donations made in cryptocurrencies. It follows the Rycroft review into foreign financial interference. Limits are also being put on donations from British people living abroad. Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, says Sir Keir Starmer is scared.
This whole thing was basically dreamt up and designed to limit the success of reform. This is a government that's petrified of us and is trying to limit our success in whatever way it can.
Iranian state media is calling Donald Trump's 15-point peace plan excessive, adding it will end the war at a time of its own choosing. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has called the US action a resounding military triumph.
More than 9,000 enemy targets have been struck to date. Compared to the start of the operation, Iran's ballistic missile attacks and drone attacks are down by roughly 90%. The United States is also annihilating the Iranian regime's navy. We have destroyed more than 140 of their naval vessels. This is the largest elimination of a navy over a 3-week period since World War II.
And Dame Sarah Mullally has been installed as the first female Archbishop of Canterbury. The Prince and Princess of Wales were among 2,000 guests at Canterbury Cathedral. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed up 142 points at 10,106. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.16. LBC weather, showers and winds easing somewhat overnight. Clear spells will allow for frost in patches, lows of -1 degree. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Very good evening to you. It's 4 minutes past 9 on LBC. Now, it's not often we get a new Archbishop of Canterbury. I think Justin Welby was in office for over a decade, wasn't he? So it was quite an occasion today when Dame Sarah Mullally was installed as the new Archbishop of Canterbury. I mean, it's about time, really, because her appointment was announced many, many months ago, wasn't it? And when you are a first of anything, I think it's really important that is noted, which is why I want to talk about it today, because she is the first female Archbishop of Canterbury. I think there's been over 100 of them, and she is the first female, for understandable reasons, I suppose, given the history of the church. And she gave her first sermon this afternoon, and she set out why she thinks the church is still relevant in modern Britain.
In the ordinary and the extraordinary life of the church, we see God's hand at work. The church rolling up its sleeves and getting stuck in, where God is already at work, in the local and the global. The church, through the ordinary lives of its people, continue to do so many extraordinary acts of love. God's people offering a listening ear, a word of encouragement, or a prayer of healing. Offering food, shelter, sanctuary, and welcome. In a world that so often seeks to divide us, tables to sit at, conversations to be shared. And being a simple, loving presence, like the salt of the earth, a light on the hill, the treasure of the kingdom.
What do you make of that? Because I must admit I zoned out a bit during that, partly because my train's home has just been cancelled, which slightly distracted me. But was that inspirational? Did she really put over the case for the church being as relevant in today's society as it has been over the years? we are described still as a Christian country. Fewer and fewer people go to church. I think there are other religions where attendance is increasing, but not, it seems, in the Church of England. I think there are some areas of the country where the Catholic Church is increasing its congregation. I think the attendance at mosques is increasing as well. So why do you think that the Church of England, the Anglican Church in this country, and I can only speak really in England because the Church of Scotland is a separate entity, but in England and Wales, why do you think that people are not going to church in the numbers that they used to? Does it matter? Does it matter if we're no longer described as a Christian country? Why is it that people don't feel the need to be as religious as maybe they once were? Certainly, I'm talking about in Christian religions predominantly, because I think if you belong to other religions, I think it is rather different. I've never felt that I need any sort of moral guidance. I think I know what is right and I know what is wrong, and I know when I've done wrong. And I don't need a member of the church to tell me I've done wrong. I don't need religion as an emotional crutch, which I think it is for some people. Now, I'm just talking about myself. You may well have a very, very different view. You may well find that religion gives you a moral guidance in your life. It gives you the support, the emotional support that you need during parts of your life. But do you think that the Church of England is essentially being eclipsed by other religions at the moment? And what does it need to do to become relevant again to you? Because there'll be many people listening tonight who maybe have been religious in their lives, but for whatever reason have stepped away from the church. Now, a lot of people have found the church's attitude, and I'm talking about here the Church of England as well as the Catholic Church, have found that the attitudes to all the different abuse scandals that have happened in both churches over the years have not been investigated in the way that they should. And I think Dame Sarah did address this in her sermon today. And they just thought, well, if the church isn't taking these issues as seriously as they should have done, I want nothing more to do with it. Does that lie behind the fact that people just don't describe themselves as Christians anymore in the way that they would have done before? We know this because of the census statistics that are released every 10 years. 0345 6060 973. Well, let's talk to the Right Reverend Dr. Joanne Grenfell, who's the Bishop of St Edmundsbury and Ipswich. Bishop Joanne, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I don't know if you were at Canterbury Cathedral today or whether you followed it, but what did you make of her sermon?
I was at Canterbury Cathedral today and really enjoyed taking part in the service. I thought that the sermon was very Archbishop Sarah. The part about rolling up your sleeves and getting stuck in is the person I know and have worked with. And I think that's true as a picture of the Church of England. It's about service in local parishes. It's about food banks, warm spaces, toddler groups. It's about the door being open for gentle pastoral care for anybody who walks through the door. And I think that is something to celebrate and something that's very much woven into the fabric of English society. I think things have changed. I don't think we're there by kind of right or authority, or I think people's views of institutions have changed hugely over the last decade, maybe 50 years even. The Church of England is very much still alive and very present.
You didn't mention the word God in that answer, which I think, again, there are plenty of people I think have lost interest in the church because they've had maybe two recent archbishops who they thought their belief in God was at best ambivalent.
I think you might be surprised the number of people who walk through the door and want to talk about God with us, and that we do that lovingly, caringly, not shoving religion down people's throats, but responding to their experience of faith. And so for me, I know that all of those volunteers who run all of those different things in parishes do so because of their faith. They want to be, they want to be the light of Jesus Christ in the community. And that's, it's often quite subtle. I don't think people shout it from the rooftops. That's not always a very English thing to do, but it's deep and it's serious.
But do you think that's maybe where the Church of England has gone wrong, in that people do need to be a bit more evangelical about it? And I mean, I think I think Catholics are a little bit more upfront about their own religion. I think certainly Muslims and Hindus and Sikhs are as well. Does there need to be a bit more evangelising?
There is plenty of that in the Church of England, though one of the things I love about the Church of England is that it's broad and that you get that kind of quiet faith as well as the much more evangelical, joyful, out there kind of evangelism. Certainly in the churches I've worked with, there are lots that will be absolutely out there, talking to people on the streets, running courses for new people, talking about faith with young people in schools, in youth clubs, really explicitly showing their faith and talking about becoming a disciple, a follower of Jesus Christ. That's really strongly there. But for some people, it needs a quieter approach, which is about kind of reaching out where they are in bereavement, in illness. And the Church of England can do all of that in different ways. I certainly don't see people who are shy of talking about God, but I do see people who are caring and sensitive in how they do that.
What did it mean to you personally to see a woman being installed as the Archbishop of Canterbury? I mean, did it give you hope for career progression for yourself, maybe?
I think what it gave me was a sense of what's possible for all people who are exploring ministry, following, their own path of discipleship and learning. People have often said that in the past about women as role models. It's very hard to imagine yourself into a role if you can't see it around you.
Yeah.
And certainly that was true for me, as someone growing up where they weren't even women who were priests. We didn't know what we were being called to. We knew there was something deep inside, but there weren't role models for how to do that. So there's been a lot of exploration over the last 10, 20, 30 years of what that means. Archbishop Sarah represents something not only to those who are ordained, but to anybody who's trying to work out what it means for them to be in ministry. And that includes people who have vocations to things like nursing, to teaching, to all kinds of different service. I know you can't walk down the street with her without people coming up to her and saying, "We see what you've done. We remember that we worked with you in nursing. We see that you care." There's a whole role model thing going on that's about women in leadership more generally that's incredibly powerful. And I think we saw that today on the Feast of the Annunciation today when we celebrated that call to Mary to see a female archbishop installed was really special.
I thought it was a little bit similar. When her appointment was announced, it was a little bit similar to when Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister. There was barely a murmur about the fact that he was Britain's first Asian Prime Minister. I would have expected a lot more resistance within the church to her as the first female archbishop. But, I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember hearing much about it at all, the fact that she was the first. And in a way, that's really positive, isn't it?
I think it is. I think the most interesting thing about Sarah Mullally is not that she's female, it's that she's Sarah. And she brings a particular mixture of skills, and she brings a quality of leadership in terms of courage and clarity about what's needed that is really quite special. But I think it's I do think it's noteworthy, but it's not the most important thing at the moment. It's just a new way of leading.
How will she be different to Justin Welby, who I think he seemed to agonise quite a lot. I mean, she needs to be more of a leader, I think, doesn't she?
I've really appreciated working alongside Sarah in the Diocese of London when she was Bishop of London. And I think I saw that she brought a lot of clarity around good process, how to do things well. She also brought a lot of personal faith, talking about her own journey of discipleship. I think she brought leadership in the public square around healthcare, around debates about assisted dying, really to be able to speak from huge and deep experience in professional fields. I think people see that in her and they see the care that she brings to it, but that's kind of different from how we've seen it done before. I think people welcome that. There's just a different style.
But leaders of any organisation, whether it's a church or in politics or business, generally need to be quite inspirational. Now, I haven't seen a lot of sort of inspirational speaking from her. She seems to be very thoughtful in what she says. But there is that. I mean, I'm not suggesting we should have this sort of American sort of all singing, all dancing archbishops, but I mean, there needs to be a little bit of pizzazz with it, doesn't there?
Oh, there's definitely pizzazz. So I've seen now Archbishop Sarah, then Bishop Sarah, absolutely light up a room talking about faith, encouraging people in their faith, talking with a different degree of vulnerability. Maybe inspirational is a bit of a gendered category sometimes, that we think of it in certain ways because we've seen male leaders doing it in certain ways. She brings something different to it, and that includes being able to be vulnerable, being able to be courageous from experience, and to inspire other people to do that. It's not the Sarah show. It's actually about being a shepherd of all of the shepherds.
How many female bishops are there now in the country?
I'm glad to say I've lost count. I think I was the 21st. I remember that much, but there's been loads more since then. So I don't know.
How many overall? I mean, how many bishops are there in the country?
It's about 110, and I think probably about 30-something are female.
Which, given it's only been, a decade or so that we've had female bishops. I mean, that's not a bad record, is it?
I think we're getting there, yeah. I mean, it's not that there aren't pockets of resistance, but I think that there are ways of living well together with that, with a bit of respect for different positions. I think few of us have problems with a theological position held in conscience about women's ordination. What we struggle with is misogyny in the church or in any bit of society, and that's the bit you need to battle against.
And how does this resistance exemplify itself?
What do you mean?
Well, you obviously were saying that there are still people who haven't reconciled themselves to the fact that there are female bishops. How do they make their views known?
I think it's small numbers, but I think you look at the abuse that female bishops and female clerics get on social media, and it's horrible. It's really insulting, and it's baseless, and it's cowardly because it's largely anonymous. Archbishop Sarah's had her share of people calling her unpleasant names. We all get a bit of it, but she particularly gets it because of her public profile. I'm not sure that's all from within the church, though bits of it are. But I think it taps into something more widely in society that female politicians get as well. That's a deep misogynistic discomfort with seeing women in leadership, and that's something that you just kind of get used to, but you shouldn't have to get used to, because it does eat away at you over time.
Right. Thank you so much for spending time with us this evening. I really appreciate it. That's the Right Reverend Dr. Joanne Grenfell, the Bishop of St Edmundsbury and Ipswich. Right, we'll come to your calls in a moment. Love to get your views on the fact that Dame Sarah Mullally is the first female Archbishop of Canterbury. Do you think that Britain is still a Christian country? Does it matter? And I think traditionalists, of which I suppose I would count myself as one, even though I'm not a religious person, I think it does matter in a way, because it's so much part of our heritage, isn't it? The fact that religion has played an important part in our history. Some will argue that it's not been wholly positive, but you're never going to get anything that's wholly positive, I suppose. We're less reliant on religious instruction now, I think, in our society. We have a much more educated people who, I think, feel they can think for themselves, and they don't need any sort of religion to think for them. Or is that an old-fashioned view in itself? 0345 6060 973. You're listening to LBC. I'm Iain Dale. It's 9:20.
The LBC app. News your way. This is LBC.
It's not easy being a clamp stuck on the wheel of the one person on the street who didn't tax their car. Yeah, Graham at number 7, I'm talking about you. Bet the neighbourhood group chat is as well. Wish I had a group chat. Maybe I can chat to myself. Hi, Clampy, how's it going? Not great, Clampy. Being clamped to the only untaxed car for miles is so lonely. Over 98% of drivers tax their vehicle on time. Tax it, don't risk it. Visit gov.uk/DVLA/tax it.
Take Irish ferries from Dover to Calais, where your pet travels in the pet lounge. You'll be barking not to. Irish ferries. See travel differently.
With over 50 years' experience, Fidelity can help you feel confidently invested. Make the most of your annual allowances by the 5th of April with our expert insights, excellent service, and wealth of investment options. For ISAs, pensions, or advice, go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
My name's Mark, and this is my NHS story. The sensation in my neck was painful all the time. Once I spoke to my GP, they referred me to my CDC. They got me in very, very quickly. The amount of pain I went through for something so easy, why hadn't I done this 4 months before?
The government is opening new community diagnostic centres, with many already available 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, so the NHS can be there for all of us when we need it. Find your closest one at gov.uk/NHS Fit for the Future, available England-wide. Iain Dale on LBC.
21 minutes past 9. I've just been slightly distracted by finding out that, believe it or not, I am the 14th highest Instagram influencer in politics in the UK, just behind Jeremy Hunt, just above Camilla Tominey. I'm not quite sure what to make of that, but there we are. Right, we're talking about religion. We're talking about Christianity. We're talking about the Archbishop of Canterbury. And we're talking about whether religion is still relevant in 2026 in this country. Let's go to Steve, who's in Haringey. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Ian. Nice to chat with you again. I smiled when I heard your question about whether Christianity is still, whether Britain is still a Christian country, because half an hour before I first heard you say that, I was eating fries in a chicken and chip shop, and this young man stuck his head round the door and started preaching to everybody and saying that we all needed to put our faith in Jesus Christ and he was going to save us all and stuff like that. So that kind of, your question really did make me smile with that kind of timing.
And what was the reaction from all the people you were with to that?
We all listened, and the guy behind the counter said, "Thank you very much, brother." But I'm a believer anyway. I was brought up with it. On that score, if you don't mind me saying so, it would help a lot if the church tried to soften at least some of that archaic religious jargon, because I grew up with it and I haven't got a clue what they're on about sometimes.
Well, yeah, the language sometimes doesn't really work, does it? They have modernised to an extent. When I was a child, I was brought up in the Church of England. We didn't go to church every Sunday, but we'd go sort of reasonably often, I suppose. And they did bring out a new prayer book, where the language wasn't all thee, thy, thine, all that kind of language. It was brought up to date. But I do rather agree with you. If you want to stay relevant, you've got to keep up with the times. And that doesn't mean to say that you have to dilute your religious doctrine. But all organisations have to move with the times. And for people who say, well, that's the religious doctrine is sacrosanct, well, we don't live 2,000 years ago. That's why there's a New Testament as well as an Old Testament, because, and why the church has altered its views on divorce, for example, which only, 50 years ago, divorce was seen as anathema within the church. Well, that's changed now. You look at some of their attitudes to other social issues which have changed.
I'm not so much talking about the thee and the thou. I'm talking about their basic communication. You still with me?
Yeah.
What I mean, for example, is I had someone come to me one day and ask what the crucifixion was about. And there were things about it that they couldn't understand at all. And the language that's used, the favourite quote is John 3:16. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that blah, blah, blah. Gave his, so what? Just say he took your punishment so you can have a clean slate and a fresh start. How did that hurt? Did the sky fall in? And they really don't like it when you modernise the language.
No, because there's always traditionalists. But is this any different from any other walk of life, where you'll always get, like people in political parties, will always want to return to the good old days when, if you're Labour when Clement Attlee was Prime Minister, or if you're Conservative when Margaret Thatcher was, forgetting that we've moved on decades since then, and you can't translate something from those times into the modern day. Well, the same thing goes for religion as well, I suppose.
Yeah, I write about this stuff. I've been working on it for months. I'm putting stuff online, and I won't bore you with the details on air. But there's a lot that can be said that can refresh it.
Steve, thank you for being our first caller. Anastasia says, Christianity and faith are not the same thing. I believe that there is something higher than ourselves. To have faith is very important to me. Faith and belief, of course, are two important words in this context, because I can't have a faith in something that I regard as unprovable. Sometimes my brain isn't particularly logical, but in this, I think it is. I need to have something proved to me, even though I understand what the word faith means in a religious context. Let's go to Wesley in Gravesend. Hello, Wesley.
Hello, Ian. First time I'm calling you. I always message you.
Well, I was going to say, you're very familiar to me, but I can't believe it's the first time you've called.
Yeah, this is a very topic that's very close to my heart. I am a theology student, a theology graduate, and when I think about this, and I think about what was Jesus' message. You see, when Jesus 2,000 years ago, when he preached, as your last caller was talking about, the jargon and the confusion, Jesus spoke in parables. And he spoke very simply to the people. But his message was not lost. And I think sometimes when, you asked your guest at the top of the hour about where was God in the whole thing. And I think sometimes we forget about the focus of what we're trying to achieve. And that's the focus on God. And it's not whether Christianity matters in the UK still, but it's about why would anyone want a faith? And I appreciate your stance on it being logical, and you don't see the logic in it. Or I don't know if that was the right word you used, but that's the thing with the gospel. When Jesus looked at the Sadducees and the Pharisees, he was saying, look at them, they're hypocrites. They got all this religious garb and they do all of these things, but Jesus said he came to do away with the law, and to go to men's heart and for men to accept him with humility and be humble. And I think sometimes the biggest advocates for Christianity in the UK are the ones that do the greatest harm. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen the Easter egg issue that's going on at the moment. And people are so concerned about not having the word Easter, or even at Christmas time, Christmas Father, or the word Christmas. Those words don't appear in the Bible. It's not scriptural. So where are people using that to form this basis of religion that just divides people rather than bringing them together?
But aren't religions in themselves divisive? Because, we've had all this argument last week about Nick Timothy saying about Muslims wanting to dominate. And it does kind of say that in the Quran. Maybe he's misinterpreted it. I don't know. But, all religions think that they are the true path, don't they?
Exactly. And even the Bible the scripture says no man comes to the Father except through Christ. But I was thinking about what happened last week at Trafalgar Square. And when I think about when Rishi Sunak became the Prime Minister, for his first Diwali, he lit the diyas, the lights at number 10, which I thought was wonderful. We've had this first Asian Prime Minister, and but nobody made any noise about it, And then all of a sudden this happens, and then people are up in arms about it. So I think people are picking and choosing, and that's why I say sometimes the biggest advocates for Christianity do the greatest harm. And I think they remove the element of love. Love covers a multitude of sin. That's what Jesus said, love the Lord your God, love your neighbor. And we forget about that. We keep on putting, for example, with the Rachel Reeves and this new to help people, this whole division, you're going to help those who are less fortunate, and what about those who are working? So you're going to help those who are not. No, it shouldn't be about that. That's just dividing people, As a Christian country, helping people shouldn't be our first thought about, I'm going to pay and he's not going to pay. You understand? I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
No, I think you're making yourself very clear. And as I said at the beginning, I can't believe that you haven't phoned in before, because I've really enjoyed your call and would encourage you to call in again, Wesley, not just message us, but I do enjoy your messages too. Right, we'll take more of your calls. Are we still a Christian country? Does it even matter? News headlines at 9:31 with Daryl Jackson.
Google and Meta have been found responsible for harming young people who are hooked on their platforms. In a landmark ruling in California, a jury's found the tech giants must pay millions of pounds in damages to the 20-year-old woman who bought the case. Iranian state media is calling Donald Trump's 15-point peace plan excessive, adding it will end the war at a time of its own choosing. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has called the US action a resounding military triumph. And Dame Sarah Mullally has been installed as the first female Archbishop of Canterbury. The Prince and Princess of Wales were among the 2,000 guests at Canterbury Cathedral. LBC weather: showers and winds easing overnight. Clear spells will allow frost in patches, a low of -1 degree.
This is LBC.
If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, what you thought you were getting may not be what you ended up with. From unexpected site fee increases, running costs, a huge depreciation in value, many owners feel they've been missold. If you think this might be you, holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive the compensation you're entitled to. Text ASSIST to 78900 to find out more. That's ASSIST to 78900.
Imagine you in a nice comfy seat, with your hands behind your head, taking in the views, instead of taking on the road, maybe even taking a nap. That's the bliss of getting where you need to go without worrying about driving. Book your train journey via avantiwestcoast.co.uk and we'll take you there. Avanti West Coast. Feel good travel.
My name is Paul, and this is my NHS story. I started to notice that the hip was becoming numb. The GP referred me for an X-ray, and just being informed, being kept in the loop, I feel much better in myself, and I feel confident about how the future is going to unfold.
The government is opening new community diagnostic centres, with many already available 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, so the NHS can be there for all of us when we need it. Find your closest one at gov.uk/NHS Fit for the Future, available England-wide.
Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
It's 9:33. We're talking about the enthronement, as I call it, or installation, as it's also called, of the new Archbishop of Canterbury, Dame Sarah Mullally. It is a noteworthy event, isn't it? Particularly because she is Britain's first female Archbishop of Canterbury. I wonder whether there'll ever be a female Pope. I'm almost expecting thunder and lightning at the moment to be struck down by a bolt of lightning for even suggesting that the Catholic Church could ever have a female pope. Although wasn't there a story that there was a female pope once? I'm sure I've read that somewhere. Chris is going to sort of eke that out for us, because I'm pretty sure someone who was pretending to be a man but wasn't. Pope Joan was her name. Let's get the story of Pope. In fact, in the next 25 minutes, let's see if we can get someone on air to tell us all about Pope Joan, shall we? So the question that we're asking is Britain still a Christian country? And does it matter if it isn't? What would we have lost in this country if we're not considered Christian? I mean, we now have fewer than 50% of people identifying as Christian. I mean, I would identify as Christian, but I don't believe in God. Now, you might think that's a ridiculous thing to say, and it is in some ways. But I think most of my morals are based on Christianity. And yes, believe it or not, I do have some morals. They're based on traditional Christian values, I suppose. I mean, we can go through the Ten Commandments, and I think most people would still want to live their lives by not coveting their neighbour's ass. Okay, I said that to be funny. It wasn't particularly funny, but you know what I mean. Scott says, I'm a Christian, and yes, I want Britain to remain a Christian country by heritage, whilst also embracing and celebrating the fact that there are multiple faiths in the UK. I've recently rediscovered the power of prayer, and I pray every day for a more peaceful world, particularly in the Middle East at this particular time, and for a lasting peace between Russia and Ukraine. Right, let's go to Emily, who's in Exeter. Hello, Emily.
Hello.
What would you like to say?
Well, I heard your question. I called. I'm driving back. I was at the installation service today, so I just wanted to share really that it's such a joyful celebration. There was just joy all the way through, and I wanted to share really with you that that's how it felt.
Why were you there?
I work for a charity that looks after social housing, essentially, and was invited as a representative of the charity.
And was it a spiritual experience for you?
It was. It was profoundly spiritual. I think coming back to the are we still a Christian country and does it matter? And you kind of covered off what I was going to say, talking about morals, because actually isn't that the most important thing? We know that God is love, and God teaches us to love and taught us to love. And imagine if all humans just operated with that ethos. It had that morality, had that as their moral bases for approaching everything in life, whether it came to dealing with people who are different from them, whether it's different cultures, different religions, different lifestyles. If we just treated everybody with love, then so much of what causes challenges and what is divisive would be gone. And so it probably doesn't matter if we're a Christian country or not, but it's the morals that sit behind Christianity and so many of the other religions that actually help us become people that work together.
Why does human nature fit into this? Because, look, I would love us to operate in the way that you suggest, but it is a bit sort of kumbaya, isn't it? Whereas we know that human nature means that there are some people that we like, there are some people that we love, there are some people we dislike, and there are some people that we hate. We know that humans are... can be warlike people. We're not necessarily all designed to live in peace and harmony.
I don't know that we're not designed to. It's that circumstances have created situations where that isn't our go-to. But even though hate necessarily isn't necessary, we can disagree with people and still have a love for who they are and what they're about. And I think acknowledging that isn't kumbaya. It's actually reframing and realigning how we interact. When you do have love of God, and when you are a faithful person, and you can see other people really struggling with being bitter and angry and what life has thrown at them, you want so much for them to know what it feels like to be okay with what you've got. And that comes from knowing what love is and what faith is. And it's such a... You can't give it to somebody. You can role model, you can, talk people through things. People can only feel that for themselves. But in actual fact, I don't think is there any ever a reason for hate?
Yes.
When?
I hate paedophiles.
And I get that, but I don't think it's like, when you see a parent and they're talking about something that's happened to one of their children, they've been murdered or something terrible has happened, and the parent says, I forgive them. And so many of us go, how can they forgive them? How could they possibly do that? But that parent means that when they say it. And that comes from a place of love, because that's still accepting that individual is an individual and they are not their actions.
Well, I hear what you say, and you're right. When a parent has been, excuse me, when a child has been murdered and a parent comes on television and says that, you have to admire them in a way. I'm not sure I could be quite as forgiving. I just think that we have to accept that hate and revenge are things which are an intrinsic part of most human beings. And yes, you try and curb your hateful instincts against certain groups of people, but they're kind of still latent in most of us, I think.
I like curb your hateful instincts. That's a lovely way of describing it. What if we strip it back to the more mundane day-to-day things, rather than talking about paedophiles or murderers? Actually, just talk about lots of humans have hate and bitterness and anger towards other humans for very little reason, and so, rather than using the extremes, just a day-to-day approach to life where if somebody pulls out in front of you, it's okay to just let it go and to pull in and say,
absolutely.
Maybe they didn't know where they were going. There's a real... We find in our work that what so many people are lacking is purpose and belonging. And when we create spaces, and whether that's day shelters, night shelters, whether it's a worship space, and lots of what we do is faith-based, but not necessarily particular religion-based. So whichever higher power you want to be communicating with, that's collectively okay. But what it gives people is a sense of belonging. There's an amazing book by a lady called Lisa Miller, The Awakened Brain. She's a Harvard professor, and she was studying psychiatry, and she watched people go in and out of her psychiatric wards, and they came in for a few weeks, and they were fixed, and then they were released back into the wild, and X amount of months later, they came back in again, and she was despairing at this this roller of people being in and out and nothing actually changing. And she was Jewish, and she saw the chapel on her ward was completely unused. Nobody ever went in there. And she one day thought, I'm going to open that and see if anybody comes in. And she found that so many of these people, just by the open door of the chapel, they said, am I allowed to come in here? I'd quite like to pray. I've never done it before, but something within me would like to pray to someone or something to see if that helps. And over the course of many years, this created this sense of belonging within this hospital, this institution that she worked in. And that ended up being the start of some kind of recovery, because that belonging and that welcome and that completely unjudgmental, you are welcome here, no matter the amount of mistakes you've made in the past, no matter, what you've done or said, you are welcome here. And that's what, in society, without Christianity as it used to look, as in the Church of England, without us having these places and spaces of belonging, humans lack that feeling of going somewhere and knowing that that's what they feel and being spiritual or passionate or enjoying it. And I think that's at the crux of what society can benefit from having faithful spaces.
All I can say is that the Church of England needs more people like you who can actually explain what it's all about in words that ordinary people can understand.
I couldn't agree more, and I know that your last caller was quite theological, and I often listen to sermons and wonder why on earth the priest feels the need to prove to those who are listening just how much theology they know and to fit it all into one sermon, because there is, and that's what Archbishop Sarah did not do today. Her sermon was so clear and accessible and relatable for so many people. And I think another caller of yours said, it was Bishop Joe, she is going to lead differently, but this is really refreshing and this is really exciting, because here is somebody who can speak and people understand, and she's talking to you no matter what faith you are, faith or none or whatever. She's using words and languages and feelings that you can connect with, and there is a directional change where that's what we need. That's what we need Christianity to look like. And ultimately, I think that brings me back round to where I started. God is love. And if all any of us take away from any time we go to church or a faith-based setting or a service or a celebration, that we are loved ultimately, there is so much about that is healing and that makes us feel important and relevant. And I think that's so much of what the angerness and bitterness that I've talked to stems from, not feeling heard or loved.
It's really spooky when you said about God and love. a text came in literally within a second of you saying that from Anthony, who said, God loves all, but that doesn't mean he likes all people. There are rules. Now, that's either very deep or a bit odd, one or the other.
And the love is conditional. The Ten Commandments that you mentioned, they are there so we can keep a check of ourselves because we have free will. He gave us free will. And by a free will, that means we have choices. And there are a million examples in the Bible of people who made mistakes. And then what they decided to do next was what made them who they were. So our free will and our guidelines in the terms of the commandments is a pathway. It's a plan. It's a way to do things. And making mistakes doesn't mean that we failed and we're never going back. God absolutely loves us unconditionally. And when we extend that to other people... Well,
hang on, a minute ago you said he didn't love us unconditionally. You said there were conditions attached.
No, I didn't. Your caller said that. I said the commandments are there as a guideline for us how to operate within our free will that he gave us.
Okay.
So God is absolutely love.
Well, Emily, I could talk to you for the rest of the hour, but I do have other callers on the line, so I better get to them as well. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Here's a question for you to mull over during the break. Johnny asks, will there ever be a female Ayatollah? That's on the back of me saying, well, will there ever be a female Pope? 9:47.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Henry Riley.
Meta and YouTube have been found liable for the harm of a young girl in a landmark social media trial. Are the tables turning on big tech? Plus, why is everyone obsessed with running at the moment?
Henry Riley at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Pain in my hip. I keep feeling dizzy. I'm getting migraines more often.
There's another way to contact your GP practice by simply sending your symptoms and requests through their website or the NHS app. We're delivering an NHS fit for the future. Tap it, type it, and we'll take care of it.
Julia, how do you spell vertebrae?
Oh, just type pain in the neck.
Jay here knows that Zoopla can provide valuations for any home in the UK. So we can see what that new couple across the road might have paid.
Ooh la la.
Have a nose at what the curtain twitchers next door could sell for. And even see what his own place is worth.
Cool, look at that.
Plus, Zoopla lets you find and compare local estate agents if you do decide to sell up. Think of all those new neighbours you'll be able to snoop on, Jay. If you want to know, just ask Zoopla.
Hi, I'm Claire, and last year I did my first big hike for Cancer Research UK. It was amazing. The scenery was stunning, the volunteers cheered us through it, and the free hot meal at the end was really what I needed. I did the full marathon hike. There's also a half marathon and a 10K if you don't fancy the big one.
Join thousands of hikers like Claire and Escape to Nature as you help to fund life-saving research. Search Big Hike today for 30% off your entry. Together, we are beating cancer. T's and C's apply.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on.
Sorry. And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
9:49. Miles says you have a basic human morality because you're a decent human, not because you were brought up in a country where Christianity was the dominant religious faith. The latter is utterly irrelevant. Let's go to Andrew in Cricklewood. Andrew, hello.
Oh, hi. Yes, thanks for taking my call. I'd just like to repeat what the other caller said. I was very pleased that you did have a Christian actually talking. It was just to say that, yes, God's love is unconditional, and it's really important. It's not conditional, it's unconditional. Anyway, I'd like to say that I was like you, Ian. I like things. I'm retired now, and so I'm a late developer when it comes to Christianity. But I've just come from a course. It's called the Alpha Course.
Oh yes, I've heard of that.
And the church is unbelievable. On a Sunday, they have 3 services. people are queuing around the block to go to the services. They have to lock the doors because the services are just so popular and they're being overwhelmed with people.
So why are they popular? But if you go to your local village church, there might be 3 men or 3 women and a dog in the church.
Well, for me, it's a really uplifting experience. They have they've hit upon a sort of a formula. It's very professional and organised, but at the same time, it doesn't follow the normal Church of England agenda. So we have some brilliant musicians that are singing relevant songs. I wouldn't call them hymns, songs. They have really powerful sermons from people that give their testimonies as to how they became a Christian.
So is this a sort of more evangelical church?
Yes, evangelical. Yeah. They've hit on a formula that is very uplifting. You can understand things. So before, obviously, I went to church before, but never. The message didn't hit home. I couldn't understand how things could happen. It seemed unbelievable, like a fairy tale. So I was an engineer, so I was a logical, pragmatic person. I need to have evidence-based facts to believe in something.
Well, same here.
And so this course that I'm on has changed me, and I've witnessed other people change. Is that basically it is exactly that. It's a completely pragmatic, logical explanation of Christianity and what a Christian believes in, and the message to take from the Bible, based on historical facts and evidence. And you can question anything, and they knock away all the objections. And then at some point in that process, and it's happened to like 60% of the people there, I'm witnessing this as we speak, is something happens. They sort of suddenly the penny drops and you experience what they call the power of the Holy Spirit. And it changes people's lives. So most of the people there, they appear to be extremely, because where it is in Knightsbridge. Articulate middle-class people. In the group that I'm in, they are lawyers.
Oh, is this the Brompton Church?
Yeah, Holy Trinity Brompton, CFOs of companies that, for some reason...
I think one of my colleagues goes there.
Well, do you know what you should... I would suggest that somebody from LBC should go on the Alpha course. But the thing for me is that the penny never drops from all, because they do things in the church without a sort of an explanation as to why. And they do sermons where they're simply reading from the Bible, as opposed to actually eyewitness accounts, powerful sermons of people as to how it changed their lives, why they came to Christ. So for me, it's been a unique, uplifting experience. And you see things in a different light. Now, you like people.
Somebody says here, it's like getting very American, and there is a bit of that, isn't there? In the sort of like with the, you can have pop singers singing at these events, these services, can't you? And there are some brilliant. I actually quite like gospel music, believe it or not. I don't know if you've heard of him. There's a gospel singer called Michael Smith, his songs are absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, the musicians are absolutely brilliant at HTB.
So you don't feel that you've been... somebody here saying, somebody else called Andrew saying, it's called indoctrination.
No, it's not indoctrination at all. It's a course. They call it an Alpha course. It's a course. It's the same as that. If you want to learn to be an engineer, or you want to learn how to be a surgeon or something, basically you have to be willing to listen and learn and question the facts. And that what they do with the Alpha course, I know hardly anything of the Bible. I'm aiming to learn about what it says in the Bible, because basically Jesus came back to earth to show us how we're supposed to live our lives. It was totally non-political. It was simply saying, follow my example. I am actually God. I'm a living person, but with the Holy Spirit of God in me. I am God. And you follow my example on how to live your life, which is the Ten Commandments. And the things that we take for granted as Christians, in this country, in the Western world, we have to understand that the reason we have human rights, all the things that we enjoy and we take totally for granted, and freedoms, human rights, the fact we have the will to do wrong as well as right, all of that stems from our Christian background. And we're incredibly privileged to enjoy that background because, there are other forces which are political movements where they have a manifesto. Yeah, and in that manifesto, it tells you they follow a person that was a very bad person and tell him to do really bad things, to basically hate people, blah, blah, blah. It's not the same. We're really lucky to live in a Christian environment.
Okay, Andrew, I'm going to say...
slavery, all those things.
I'm going to let you go because we've only got 3 minutes left and I want to talk to Aaron in Bournemouth. But before I do, Wesley in Gravesend is back on a message. He says, you're talking about Michael W. Smith and his song Above All is perfect for Easter. Aaron, very good evening. I'm afraid we've only got about 2.5 minutes. What would you like to tell us?
I'll be very quick. There's been some cracking calls tonight, and I think people that have been calling in, sharing different experiences. My background is that I go to a Holy Trinity Brompton plant down in Bournemouth. I think some of the some of the comments about Americanization, I've been around those kind of churches for the last 40, 45 years. So I think it's not a recent thing. It's just that we often focus too much on the quaint old Church of England churches where you've got few kind of parishioners. But actually, there's a really vibrant church out there across the country. And like the last caller, our church has got real problems with accommodating everyone. We'll always run out of seats. We're thinking of kind of other services that we can run.
So is this sort of a franchise type thing?
It's church planting. It's really just kind of going to communities and finding that there is a thirst and a desire. And I think often it's made a big issue that the church is dwindling. But I think the way I look at it is that I'd rather see someone have a real quality of their faith than there be a instant kind of reaction or knee-jerk reaction for us to kind of come to the defense of Christianity. And I think we've got a situation at the moment where it's almost like a tale of two churches. People kind of trying to defend kind of what they feel is possibly a loss or a mourning of Christianity in this country that maybe they're identifying through more of a cultural Christianity, and those where we're actually seeing a revival in the church and young people coming to faith, people like your last caller, finding real substance in Jesus Christ and kind of his message. So I think it's an interesting time, certainly.
Well, I think we can all agree with that. Thank you very much indeed. Adam says here, I want to contribute. Why don't my messages get read out? Well, Adam, can I tell you, and let me tell everyone this, during an average programme, we probably get over 1,000 texts and messages. So we can only read a few of them out. And if my eye catches a particularly good one, then I read them out. But we can't read everyone out. And I'm sorry about that. Well, thanks for all of your calls and messages this evening. Some really interesting calls that we've had. I'll be back tomorrow from 7. Just to let you know that I've got a new All Talk podcast out today. Sajid Javid is my guest. He's talking about his new book, The Colour of Home, about his upbringing in the 1970s. Really, really interesting listen, so do download that. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Richard Sperber. Right now, in for Ben Kentish, it's Henry Riley.
Thank you very much, Ian. Good evening at 10 o'clock.
This is a landmark moment. It will reverberate. Mark Zuckerberg has to take a phone call, and the only thing he's waiting for now is to find out if there are going to be punishment damages.
Meta and YouTube have been found liable for the harm of a young girl in a landmark social media addiction trial. Are the tables starting to turn on big tech? Plus,
the solution is for them to be given equal opportunity, which they're not. So therefore, this has come about because they say, well, we're going to have to do something about it.
Football legend John Barnes, Reform UK says it's utter woke nonsense for the FA to have a target for 30% of